That's not good.
Okay, Jake, we're on.
That's not good.
Michelle, you won't want to go to participants and rename yourself because you're showing up as Zoom webinars right now.
Okay, I have to get back to Zoom though. I mean, yeah. How do we do that?
Oh, you can just close Google out. You don't need it open while you're streaming.
Okay. I think I did it.
If you go to the participants board and hit more next to your name, you can rename yourself.
I think I'm doing it.
Yep, you're good now.
Okay.
Did you make Matt and Mark co-hosts?
Mark is a co-host. And Matt is now as well.
So now you got a broadcast to open up to anybody who didn't have an invite or can't find their invite.
Okay, so we are live on YouTube and we are broadcasting. I think that's everything, right?
Put your arms in
Yep, we're just missing a couple council persons.
Okay.
Has anybody heard from John or Kelly or Andrew?
Okay. Let's see. No. No, I have not. All right, there's Vince. Oh, I see John, so I'll promote him. Patrick. I'm checking on Kelly. And Andrew. Just a reminder to everyone, we're broadcasting and we are live on YouTube. There's Kelly. Kelly, welcome. I just wanted you to know we're live on YouTube and we are broadcasting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Kelly, I heard today that Mishta awarded the Opportunity Center 30,000, some of it to go to the rain garden or the gardens.
Yeah, we got the neighborhood enhancement program grant.
That's a good deal.
Yeah, they were going to use some of it for Cultivate Community, but since they had to cancel, we were able to make use of it at the Selma Rankins Garden. Yeah, it's beautiful over there. You have to ride down and check it out.
I did a couple days ago.
Yeah, those veggies are taking off.
All right. We have everyone. Andrew, since you're just coming on, we're broadcasting and we are live on YouTube. I have 6 o'clock, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Item. So it is 6 o'clock at this time. We call the City Council work session meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
First, we're going to do the Election Commission meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. I forgot. Election,
all right.
Commission, please. Thank
So-
you.
Commissioner Whitman,
Here.
Ike Angeli,
Here.
Vining,
Here.
Jermaine,
Here.
Lamore,
Present.
Felder,
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Present. I apologize because we do have some Election Commission items to take care of. Well, we received information from you today as well.
Correct. So the first item would be approval of the minutes for the meeting held on April 20th, 2020. I'll need a motion and a vote.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes from the meeting held April 20th, 2020.
And Councilman Jermaine?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion with Commissioner Lamore, supported by Commissioner Jermaine. We need roll calls, correct?
Correct.
Okay, please call the roll.
Commissioner Whitman,
Yes.
Ike Angeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
Yes.
Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
All right, and for those that don't normally attend these meetings, the Election Commission is set up to, it happens prior to every election, and there are several things prescribed by state law that need to happen, and it's all basically geared toward making sure that the elections are run efficiently and fairly, et cetera. So it provides a bit of oversight. The first item under commission action, resolution delegating duties to the clerk treasurer. It was attached in your packet, and the motion that we're looking for is there.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution delegating election duties to the clerk treasurer.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Archaeology, supported by Commissioner Lamore regarding the resolution for the duties of clerk treasurer. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Whitman,
Yes.
Ike Angeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
Yes.
Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
The next item is the absent voter counting board. As you know, it's the commission's responsibility to establish the report time and location. I want to draw to everyone's attention one of the steps that I'm taking to allow us to get through the larger volume of absentee ballots that we will be having for this election and in preparation for November. We are going to have 3 absentee counting boards. They will be absentee board 1, 2, and 3. And we are asking that they be reporting at 7 a.m. on Tuesday, August 4th here at City Hall. So I'll need a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the absentee voter counting boards 1, 2, and 3 to report at 7 a.m. Tuesday, August 4th, 2020 to the 3rd floor of City Hall with an alternate location of council chambers at City Hall.
Support.
Motion by Commissioner Lamore, supported by Commissioner Whitman regarding the absentee voter counting board. No other comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Whitman,
Yes.
Ike Angeli. I'm sorry, I think that was yes. Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
Yes.
Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
The next item is the approval of inspectors, and I did just want to take a moment to go over the list. As you can see, if you've had an opportunity to review it prior to now, is that we are still working on a little bit of balance. We have utilized all of the election inspectors that we currently have recruited for this election. It is heavy in some precincts on one party. I recognize that we have to work on that, and we have a couple of options. Vince and I have been talking about a way to supplement some of the election inspectors that aren't able to work due to COVID. And the state is also collected inspectors through a pool, and I am in contact with them to determine if there are any that would be willing to come down to Monroe County. So the list I'm having you approve tonight is may be adjusted in the future, but it will be adjusted in the future. But for now, it is approval of all of the election inspectors that we currently have recruited. We have quite a few new ones, but and it's been hard to keep up with those that have not, who are unable to work, like I said, due to the virus. So, and I did want to point out that it shows the breakdown for the AV counting boards. We have AV precinct 1 will be the 1st, 2nd, and 3 South precincts, because they all have the same commissioner, county commissioner seat. 3 North and 4, and AV 5 and 6. 5 and 6, precinct 5 is our heaviest voting precinct. Usually 5 and 6 makes up the bulk of the AVs that we typically get in, and breaking them down this way will hopefully allow us to have the boards not quite equal, but fairly close. So that's why you have a few more precincts in one of the AV boards. So I will need a motion as suggested on the agenda.
Like to make a motion to approve.
I'll make
the-
a motion.
Yeah, I have a motion.
Go ahead, Brian.
All right, go ahead, Councilman.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the election inspector assignment list as provided by Clerk Treasurer Lavoy.
There's a motion, and I heard
Second.
Commissioner Germaini for a second. Any questions from the commissioners? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Whitman,
Yes.
Michael Angeli, Vining,
Yes.
I can see him saying yes.
Yes.
Germaini,
Yes.
Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
And finally, we have the public accuracy test, which is where the commissioners will need a quorum, and they will actually conduct the accuracy test to ensure that the programming and the equipment being used on the day of the election is tested beforehand and is counting accurately. So my suggestion is that we have it on our traditional Tuesday before the election. That will allow us to stay within state law. And I have left the time open, and we just need members to volunteer for that. It is a longer ballot, so I would definitely book an hour for the test. At least probably an hour, hour and a half is probably safe.
So I think as we start and before the motion, look at the time, but also the commissioners here, as your calendar may permit, if you know what, July 28th on Tuesday, I am available in the morning and early afternoon. I know we've done it at 10 o'clock and earlier, but I
And
would
it
say.
will be a Zoom meeting. I forgot to mention that, but it will be via Zoom.
Okay, I'll see if there's any other commissioners that know that they would be available. Clerk, you're looking for, is it 3, correct? Or 4?
We typically do 4.
Okay.
And what
Michelle's
time is it?
available.
Okay, Commissioner Germaini, others?
Michael
What
Angeli.
time is it?
We have to establish the time.
Okay.
Commissioner Michelangelo, I think you said you could, okay, you were there. So we'll be looking for one more, and we'll have to determine the time.
I will be available for an online meeting.
Okay, and Commissioner Felder. So the time, is there a conflict in the time for those that have participating?
Do we have one more? I need 4.
I have 4.
Okay.
I can work, or Andrew.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, and well, I'm free to let the councilman sit in instead of me too, so. All right, so we have 4.
I'm better in earlier in the morning. 8 o'clock in the morning is great for me.
I'm looking for the others.
I can be there.
Okay,
I'm
Okay.
fine too. 8 o'clock is fine.
Yeah, same here.
All right, then why don't we set it for 8 o'clock on Tuesday, the
That
20th.
works.
okay.
Drew,
So we
okay.
have plenty to hear. You need the names though today, is that correct?
I think I have what I need.
Okay,
I
so
think I
we
have what
said,
I need.
and we said 8 a.m.
Yes.
So we need a motion for the time and a quorum of the commissioners, so.
What I heard is basically almost everyone can
Yes.
make it, and that's fine. Everyone is invited. I just need to make sure I have a core group for the quorum.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll make a motion to hold as a Zoom meeting the public accuracy test for August 2020 primary on Tuesday, July 28th at 8 a.m. with the test conducted by most of the members of the election commission.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Eckline, supported by Commissioner Lamore to set the date time as mentioned for the public accuracy test. Any other questions from council? Commissioners? No? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Whitman,
Yes.
Echoangeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
Yes.
Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
All right.
Additional
I just
comments?
wanted to make one quick comment under clerk treasurer comments. I've already mentioned how the virus is impacting the election. We are seeing an increase in absentee ballots, both requested and being returned. However, we are still going to have to plan as if we will have, our usual attendance at the precincts, because we obviously can't be caught short there. So I am working to keep costs contained as best I can. But we're purchasing additional PPE, et cetera. I have purchased some of that through the state. They've worked and secured some funding, but there will be some additional purchases. And I'm working with Mark Cochran on some of the acquiring some of the items that we need. And of course, City Manager Pestu has been very helpful as well, making sure that I have some assistance in recruiting to be fully staffed. So I will keep everyone apprised during the council meetings, during my comment section, as we move closer to the election.
Very good. Commissioner comments? I see none. I'm just going to make a quick comment about the list. I appreciate the work by the clerk treasurer's office to get election inspectors. I see some new names there. So I put this out to those that are kind of zoomed in here watching. There's plenty of opportunities to support your community in relation to the elections, as was stated by the clerk treasurer. Please contact her office if you think you can fulfill the roles to these important duties. That's my only comment. Clerk, do you, I guess I don't know if there's citizens comments.
I don't see any citizen comments, so.
Comments from, okay, none comments there. So at this time, we'll just, do you need a vote on adjournment or just a roll call?
I'll do the motion to adjourn and then I'll do the roll call.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Or
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. Clerk?
Commissioner Whitman,
Yes.
Echoangeli,
yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
Yes.
Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And I think we're going to go right into our work session. Is that correct?
Yes.
We need a minute.
I just need to find the roll call sheets.
Okay.
There's a lot of white pieces of paper, so I have to
Okay.
find which one is which. All right, I'm ready, sir.
Okay, at this time, now I'm on order. Call the City Council work session or meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman,
Yes.
Echoangeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
Yes.
Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. So before we get to the work session agenda, there's at least 6 items, and possibly if city manager has other items to add that we have discussion for here over the next hour or so. A work session for those that may be watching or zooming in is an opportunity for the council and the administration to exchange some thoughts and ideas on topics that moving forward, some things we may have chatted about before, other things may be on the horizon and looking for direction from council on policy, so the administration and manager can carry out the operations aspect of the city government. With that, there are no items on here that are decision-making items. I want to clarify. So work sessions are about discussion for council administration, but not for motions or decision-making for those that may have not gone in before. On most work sessions, there's not public comment. However, I want to be clear, those that may be watching, because there is a topic that I think may generate some conversation or desire to have input. The city council meeting follows immediately after this work session. At the beginning of the agenda, there is public comment time, and that's an opportunity for anybody to make comments on an item not related to the agenda. looking through this list, I'm not sure that I don't see any that are on the agenda for decision-making. There is an opportunity at the beginning of the meeting for the council on the city council meeting to amend the agenda or make recommendations. Doesn't mean it happens, but I just wanted that to know as a background. So the work session is to really have some discussion, positions from the council, some direction for administration. And obviously if we get done quickly, there's opportunities for other conversation, but I just want to say that so people don't think that we're not willing. It's just the items have to be resolved. And we can do that at the beginning of the next meeting if there's comments regarding one of these work session items. Mr. Pastu. You're muted. There you go.
Yep, sorry, I had myself muted there. Thank you, Your Honor. Got quite a few items to try and get through here over the next hour, so we'll see how we can manage that. The first item to talk about is proposed street millage. We had a discussion meeting or so ago regarding whether to consider putting a proposed millage, street millage before the voters. If you recall, last calendar year at the end, I was recommending, given the conditions of our streets and also the funding limitations that we have, that the council consider capital improvements millage on a broader context. And I've kept narrowing it down to considering just a street millage, I think, which would be easier for residents to consider. I attached the CIP listing of projects that we have from City Engineer Patrick Lewis for the next 5 years, and then also a listing of other projects that could conceivably be accomplished in the future, totaling over $33 million. When you look at it, what I would be recommending is if you're going to consider it, a 2 mil levy, 15-year period. And as you look at it, roughly half of the revenue sources that we have would be coming from this millage. Historically, we put some money in from capital improvements. I'm becoming more and more concerned with the availability and to do that, as well as, still have funding available for park and sidewalk and those type of improvements as well. So, understanding the time and the circumstances, we have with this pandemic, whether now is the appropriate time, I'm certainly, open to your consideration. But here's the listing of projects that we know we could accomplish if you were to consider a proposal. If you're still interested, what we would do is work with the city attorney and probably our bond counsel with Miller Canfield, putting some language, because I could anticipate a few of the projects, maybe short-term bonds to try and get the best impact and even some of the best financial challenges, since construction costs are exceeding the cost of borrowing these days. So with that, I'm open to thoughts, questions.
Thanks, Councilman. All right, thank you, City Manager. I'll look to the council members if there's any comments or thoughts regarding the first item on proposed street millage. Councilman Lamore.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple of questions regarding cost per resident. If we do a 2 mil 15-year levy or 2 million 15 years millage, just curious what kind of cost a resident should expect on their tax bill with that type of millage.
So if you're have a $100,000 taxable value, it would be approximately $200 additional per year. Using a $100,000 home with a $50,000 taxable value, obviously that would be, $100. So think of those terms, every $50,000 or increments would be about $100.
SEV, correct?
Taxable value, yep.
Okay.
Other questions or queries from council? Council Michelangeli, I think you're still muted, sir. I know it's not clicking over a couple times. There you go.
I don't have a problem with the millage, but I still advocate that you know, streets are a good thing in a community, and so is sanitary and water lines, but that's not necessarily what brings residents into a community. Parks bring residents into a community, trails bring residents into a community, and so does a good school system. So I still advocate that we need to, if we're going to do a 2 mil levy, we need to carve out some money, maybe a quarter of that quarter mil, at least a quarter of a mil, to dedicate it to parks, so we can stay in front of our park maintenance as much as we want to stay in front of the maintenance for our streets.
You know, I hate to put Ed on the spot, but I think that in doing this, it would allow some of the other general fund revenues that we have historically contributed to parks, streets, sidewalks, would allow for additional to maintain that funding level by doing this.
Well, you know, I think one of the things I noticed somebody had wrote a letter to the editor. I think it was Jeff Hensley. They wrote a letter to the editor saying that, you know, the condition of the River Raisin, the Heritage Trail, especially out by the state park and by the national park, needs to be resurfaced. I do think that if we do the 2 mills, we should at least include in the language that the 2 mills can be used for streets and sidewalks and multi-purpose pathways. We need to accommodate both vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic. If we can make those adjustments, I think that would benefit us in the long term.
Thank you, Councilman. I'll see if there's others first, other council members that haven't spoke yet, and I'll get back to Brian. Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, John, I agree. I think that's good. Now, the question would be, are you talking about maintenance or creation of trails? He just left us. Or there he is over there. I'm sorry.
No, my thought was at least make sure that we have money to maintain what we have.
Okay. Or potentially create too?
Yeah, it would be there could be an opportunity to create. I know the county has funded the kind of like a pathway system countywide, and I think some of it does come into the city. So we may want to have some, at least the potential, if we have the, you know, if we do the millage, to be able to put some money into a pathway system for new construction. But my initial interest was primarily to maintain what we have.
I know you'd spoken before about possibly putting a new pathway in where the tracks came into downtown Monroe, if you recall.
Yeah, we have a plan on that. We paid for it.
Would that be something that you'd be thinking of putting use for that, some of that millage dollars?
Well, I think that'd be great because it's non-motorized traffic. A lot more people, especially now with COVID, people are starting to walk and ride their bikes more. And hopefully that continues because that's more of a healthy environment for everybody. So I just don't, you know, I guess my caution is, let's just not make it about streets. Let's make it about motorized and non-motorized.
Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. I guess the first question I have would be to follow up with what the city manager had asked of Ed Sell in terms of what revenues would be freed up by the millage. It doesn't look like in the projections provided that there's much in the way of street funding come from the general revenue unless we're backfilling into the CIP budget. Furthermore, I do sort of agree with Councilmen Icoangeli and Lamore in that you're going to free up a lot of vehicular traffic if you allow for more pedestrian and non-motorized transportation take place. Right now, Monroe's not exactly, we got a lot of trails, but it's not a very walkable town. I can tell you anyone in my neighborhood, if you're going downtown or you're going to the grocery store, you're driving. And there's not really a way to get there without doing it. We don't have our commercial corridors connected to our neighborhoods by any real mechanism. And to the extent that we could free up traffic congestion by transitioning to non-motorized transport or trails that would allow for that, I think that's a good thing. And they're intertwined. I don't think it's one at the exclusion of the other. I think they interact.
Okay. Okay, I see that Councilwoman Whitman is connecting back with us. There she is, but Councilwoman Germaine, you have a comment?
I want to say that I agree with John and Brian and Andrew. The connectivity of our trails is disjointed, and the Heritage Trail, although it was beautiful when it first came out, is it's in disrepair. And yeah, we need to set aside something to keep up the beauty that we have around us and finish what we started and connect these trails so that we can have bike paths and walkability amongst our city. Thank you.
I guess I'll make a comment. I know that, see, Brian, you have your hand up again, but you know, that trail that goes out to Sterling State Park is not city owned, but yet there's opportunities to partner. And I know there's a task force group that's currently doing some study engineering, talking with the DNR. I think they're willing to put some significant effort into making improvements there, but you still got to get there too. And I think that, you know, some areas of our community do have connectivity, and I guess it matters where you start and to get where it's at, but there's always options. Having motorized and non-motorized in the language, it might actually expand support. Others may not have an interest, but I think at least as we've talked about getting through and working our way around the city, non-motorized, there's more and more use in that fashion, especially at this time. Brian, you have another comment?
Yes, sir. You hit right in the first part of your comment about the Heritage Trail not being a part of the city, but I think a part of it is. Correct me if I'm wrong. I just don't know whereabouts it starts. You're saying none of it is.
As you go past the national park and out underneath the
I-75.
I-75, it transitions, but we were a partner as it was developed, and it wasn't enough funding to look at the long-term maintenance and sustainability. And I think those are things that are critical, and grants today would have to be done. But I think there's going to be some information coming out long before we get through this process that I think would help kind of marry this together in some fashion. I think that there's a role for the city. I don't say there's not. It's just a matter. I think there's a larger role than some funding outside the city that I think will at least that's only one section. As we've all said, there's many sections of how we need to and can elaborate on our non-motorized. You know, that's where the sidewalks come in, and there are some areas that are a challenge, and we need to stay on those. And I know that's on some of our discussion with the administration. Other comments from the council? Okay, I think what I hear is that there's support to move forward. Obviously, how that's written and what we can do, and then obviously our conversation with the community and having them understand what it is and exactly what it'll be for, as we've done in many other millages and support we received, is the residents just want to know, and I think we can help deliver that message. Vince?
Just so I understand, and I'm gonna, you know, Mr. Buds and I can talk a little bit about how this is framed, but the essence of it would be dedicated for street resurfacing and reconstruction, sidewalk and ramp replacement, capital maintenance and expansion of bike and pedestrian pathways.
Yeah, bike non-motorized is really what it is. Yep, sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
You know, the one thing I didn't put in there is also there may be some storm sewers that we may have to include when we do that. So there may be some language that we look in at, but the reality of it is that we can, you know, Mr. Buds and I, and probably with Ed and bond counsel will put together some language that we'll have back before you for consideration at the next meeting on the 20th.
Very good.
Matt, is there anything you need to add to it, you think, or?
No, I'm comfortable with where we'll proceed. We'll put together some language as you indicated.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Next item is regarding the kitchen renovations and interior renovations at the Opportunity Center at ALCC. And we received bids for the project. They were competitive bids. We had a number of bidders, and the fact that they came in fairly close told us that they are understanding a good understanding of the scope of the projects. They did come in a lot higher than the architect's estimate, a couple $100,000, but there is no point in rebidding the project. We think it's a good project. And as I think Mark is going to be pulling up the share of the screen with kind of an outline where we're going to come up with some ideas for funding the project. And so we're looking at, roughly $599,000 for the project construction, a modest 5% contingency, and then some inspections. And I use inspections as part of the architect and engineering services, reviewing that, almost construction administration. So going through the sources of funds, we had 150,000 budgeted this current fiscal year. We've spent some money related to architect engineering fees for it. Carry that forward. We had planned on appropriating 150,000 for this next year with our CDBG funds. We also had planned on putting some money into plaza improvements there. I would recommend that you incorporate that into the kitchen and interior improvements. We've got some unspent money that I think we double counted what we were budgeting for the Dorsch Library. So there's about 100,000 there. And then redirect money that was not spent this last fiscal year with the planning department, 25,000, down payment assistance, 20,000. That reading assistance should be 20,000 there. And then I think Ed and I tinkered with this a little bit. I might have to, can you work with that, Mark? Put 20,000 there. Yep. Zero out the 75,000. Yep. And then down below, that would be items 2 and 3 for the current year CDBG. When you got these spreadsheets going around, you got so it would be the items 2 and 3. If you just sum those two up there, Mark, it'll tell you what we got there. There you go. And so the 400,000 you see with the CDBG budget that we're looking at is roughly what we're anticipating for the upcoming year. Some of these items we do need to maintain with that. And then in lieu of increasing the appropriation, what was the one that we were looking at putting in there, Ed? Was that, Ed and I changed a number there. What was that?
Down at the bottom, you mean?
Yeah, at the bottom of the recommended funding sources, where we took line item 9 and we put, what did we put in there?
Oh, we put in redirect fiscal year 2019-20 demolition.
Okay.
Funding.
Yep.
21,000.
21,000. And then if you just plug that in the column there, Mark, it'll give us what we need to find as far as a shortfall. There we go. So we're looking at roughly $123,000. We are doing some scratching. Trust me, I think we can find a way there between a combination of looking at some other outside sources with MCOP. I haven't approached the county whether there's some availability for through the senior program. We got some additional funds that we received far more than what we thought we would with the personal property tax reimbursement in June. We may look at that and then just what other sources we may come up with. But the point of it is this is what we've got to make up as far as the difference to fund the project. Candidly, I think we can get there between now and 2 weeks from now with a source to present to City Council. It is a good project. The bids were, very competitive and certainly tight, which is, again, as I reiterate, they understood the scope of the work. So with that, I wanted to use this more as informational, get your thoughts on it as well, because
Thank you, Vince. I think as you finalize that up and if Mr. Cochran can just kind of send that to the council as well. John, you have your hand up. Please start.
Yeah, Your Honor, thanks. I think we should just proceed with it. I'm sure we can,
Yeah.
Go through the budgets and figure out where we can come up with the shortfall. And in the meantime, maybe actually take a look at either some other grant sources or foundation requests.
Yep.
But, we've gone, we've made a significant investment both in the park, the ALCC organization, and I think the improvements here will definitely benefit the neighborhood and the community.
Thanks, John. I agree. I think that the efforts over the last couple of years, if not longer, some of the, not just the infrastructure work and improvements, and as we've gone through that, these are what we've been focusing toward to get the other things done. And this is where we are with the labor park. That, COVID stalled things, but doesn't mean it's not going to get done. I agree. I think there's a way to find that shortfall comparably to get this done. And I do support we move forward as well. Other comments from council members? Kelly, go ahead.
Thanks, Your Honor. Yeah, I think it's a good project. I was surprised how high the bids came in, but we've been talking about this for several years now. So I'd like to see it completed, and hopefully there'll be some ongoing programming set in place, especially that will benefit the young people. So we'll see. But I think we should try to get this thing going. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Good point. I think when you talk about programs is really the heart and the foundation of getting things forward and the use of the facility. So thanks for your comments. Look and see if there's other comments from Councilwoman Germaini.
I agree with Kelly. I say we've been working on this long enough. Let's get it done and move on and get the programs going.
Yep. Okay, Vince, I think, John, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Your Honor. I think one information only maybe, and I think this would benefit us when we go to foundations or other granting agencies. It would be interesting if we could put together kind of a spreadsheet of all of the investment that we have made in the neighborhood. And that would be, for example, the fire station, the acquisition demolition of the Purple Church, some of the other properties that we've acquired and demolished, the labor park investment, the investment in the kitchen, and any other ones that I forgot about. But it would be interesting to pull all that together to show the amount of investment that we've made in the neighborhood.
Yeah, John, I agree. I think that when you talk about some of our federal funds, the state funds, the local funds, and I know that Mr. Cochran has, we had an opportunity to the Community Foundation to meet with some externals, and that was a real strong point of Mark's presentation about the community development and related to the national park, but also more the community, and those opportunities are there. Kelly, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thanks, Your Honor. Yeah, I was thinking this whole conversation started about 5 years ago with some partnership talks with the community college, and in hopes of maybe they'd be able to get some actual credit-based classes in the city, within the city limits. And so I think it'd be beneficial to talk back with the college about, maybe their foundation wants to contribute, and also to make sure that the original plans can still happen as far as teaching the culinary arts classes and programming in the neighborhood. And I also, since we're talking about neighborhood investments, I know I say this a lot, but I just want to remind everyone that the Opportunity Center and the Navarre Library, it's one parcel that belongs to the city. I know it's two different agencies, but we don't want to let one side of the building deteriorate while we're putting millions, literally millions, into the other side. So I'd just like to take this opportunity to say, let's not forget Navarre and some of the basic improvements that it needs, but also rethinking what we can do with the library for the limited space that we have. I know we did the whole thing to try to get a bigger, better library, and that didn't go through, but maybe what we can do with what we already have, especially while we're already in the middle of doing so much work at the location. So that's just a reminder I wanted to throw out there.
It's worth putting there, I have to say.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Just as a comment, we've talked internally, Patrick and I, we put, addressed both the fire stations. New one is West Side. We've done quite a bit of improvements here at City Hall. Got some over at Homestead, much more work there. Certainly plenty of money into the National Park Education Center. So our facilities are, and Dorsch Library, we just recently put some money into. So our facilities, I think we've put some investment, but we know that we got to now start looking at the Navarre Library for some improvements. So.
Kelly?
And it's not just because I work there.
I know.
It's because we serve so many young people, and we do it on such a limited budget. And we, before COVID, we had so many programs, and I just want that to be recognized, how much time that we actually do spend with the children. So any investment in the library will not be a waste in terms of serving the community and the children. It's not just because I work there that I'm. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
So we'll bring this back hopefully for approval with a tied down funding source at the next meeting. So.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Moving on, next item.
Mark Cochran, he'll give you an update on the Scallywags license. I know we talked about it at our last work session, and it's got some rendering drawings for you to look at, because I think council wanted a little bit more information before authorizing a license agreement.
Sounds good.
Yep, Mayor, Council, as Vince mentioned last time we brought this up, there was an interest and an openness to consider an engagement with Scallywags on the city-owned property between his building, 44, and also the former UNI building, where there's currently a city sidewalk and some lightly and maintained green space there. Scott Kegris at Scallywags, I think I had mentioned before, is having an issue with a lack of storage and being able to access a lower level, but also a desire to improve the look and the feel and the character of that space and taking ownership of it, and as well as long-term maintenance. And so with that, you had requested to get an idea on what the proposed plans are. I'll preface before I share the screen that Scott is not a professional architect or an artist, but I think that he did a pretty decent job, at least in giving us an idea of what his plans for that building would be. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So think of this as an aerial above the building, if you would. This is where the current sidewalk is. This is Front Street on the right side of the page. So this is
Mark, I'm seeing an agenda. I'm not seeing any drawing.
It went back away.
Oh, sorry about that.
It was there just for a second.
3 monitors I'm working with. Let me, how about now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So this would be where the current existing sidewalk is and where the sidewalk would remain. On the side of Scallywags, this is 44. Toward the front of the building, he would build on a retail koi room for koi fish. It would actually, we had talked before, it would be sort of an open space where you'd be able to see the pond and things of that sort. Those plans have changed to something a little more safe and secure, so that the fish wouldn't be harmed due to any malfeasance after hours. And then behind that would be an area of green space and a rock garden, building a retaining wall that would incorporate the existing handrail. He's proposing to put in a pondless waterfall on the sort of in that corner behind the koi room, and then also along the side of his building with some planted green space and a rock garden. And then at the back of the building, in order to access the basement from the rear parking lot, installing the concrete pad so he could take deliveries from the rear. Right here is where the existing meters and things for his utilities are. So you'll see in a minute when I show you a profile of the building, what the plan to cover that would be. But installing a couple 6-foot doors to allow deliveries on the lower level. And then on the other side of the sidewalk would be a retaining wall going down the side to match what goes around the green space in the rock garden, with some built-in benches so that folks can sit and enjoy the green space and listen to the waterfall and find some respite in that area. There would be overhead lighting incorporated across the alleyway, sort of those outdoor patio lights that you see. And then also probably some lights on the side of the building as well to make sure that it's well lit. And that would be up against the former U&I bar. And this would be the side profile if you're looking at the side of the Scallywags building from coming from Monroe Street. So you can see where the sort of the knee wall would be with the, it would look like vinyl stone, and I've got the materials I can show you here. Here would be the koi pond with the viewing area and the windows. He is proposing to cover the entire side of the building with the cedar shake, it's called, vinyl cedar shake. And I've got an example I can hold up, even though I'm sure it's not as good as it would be in person. And then have sort of the corrugated metal ceilings coming off the side, like a side roof protruding off the building, covering the koi fish retail room, and also overhead of the double doors and the back of the building where the utilities would be. And then in this area again would be the vinyl stone. And then again, the cedar shake covering the side of the building. I'm not sure if you can see, but that would be sort of the material that the knee wall would be covered in, make it look very natural, and match sort of the rustic feel with the ceiling. And then the cedar shake, you can see a material sample here, and how it looks on a house. I know it's very difficult to see, but so that's what Scott is proposing to do. And again, we've talked about doing a license agreement until the work is completed, and then turning ownership over to Scallywags and Scott for that entire space, with the city retaining an easement for the sidewalk. So
I did see one hand raised. Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think generally I want to say yes to this. Help me get there. I think this sort of initiative by the businesses downtown is certainly great. This sort of personal development that they're taking on their own and beautifying the front of their business and expanding as much as they can with the room that they have. That's all. That's certainly laudable. I'm wondering what happens to structure and the ownership rights when Scallywags is no longer Scallywags, and it gets transferred to perhaps a restaurant that wants to have seating out front and doesn't want those outbuildings or structures. Are they easily taken down? Is the city going to retain ownership of the sidewalk once he sells the business or moves on, or what's the plan there? What's the long-term plan?
yeah, keep in mind this wouldn't impact the front of the building on Front Street. This is solely along the side, along the alley. The koi room that he's proposing would be part of the structure and part of the building. I don't have the dimensions off the top of my head, but it's not very big. It would fit between the building and the existing sidewalk right now. So it's more just a bump out of the building, and then maintaining landscaping all the way down across the building or on the side of the building. So, I mean, I'm sure our city attorney is very capable that even if the ownership of the building would change hands, we would retain that easement to make sure that the sidewalk remains.
John?
Yeah, thanks, Your Honor. I guess some of the comments that I have is that it appears to me that we're using residential materials on a historic downtown commercial building. And I know that this building along that alley has got basically, because the way that it was, whatever the issue is, I know that the brick, the patina is not on the brick. And my understanding is that the brick actually weeps inside the building. And there's got to be something done to that building on that wall to protect that building in the future. Now, I'm sure the owners are aware of that, but the idea of, I hate to set a precedent where we're starting to use residential materials like vinyl stone siding and vinyl cedar siding, which you only see on a residential building, where we would start using that kind of materials in our downtown, which is inconsistent with the facade program and the basic guidelines of the National Register of Historic Places. So my question is, where's the DDA on this project?
Well, I know that Annette is aware of it. I don't think he has submitted any kind of application for a facade project program, but clearly this would be one of those where I think, it does have a public purpose of improving, a walkway from the sidewalk down to the parking lot. And so, I could see the merit of having that considered for part of the DDA to assist in some of the funding, particularly the areas that I think would be for public purpose.
It has not come to the DDA as of yet. I know this is the start point of a discussion with the city regarding, I'll just say the easement or the expansion to continue some of the business that they're doing in the space that they have. Councilman Lamore.
Yeah, just going back to Councilman Michelangelo's comments, what type would you like to see rather than what he was proposing for the side of that building?
Brian, I really can't.
Just renovating what it is.
Yeah, I really can't tell you because I'm not an architect, but I know that wall's got some issues going on with it, and the application of residential materials, one, may not be a solution, and two, is inconsistent with what we're trying to do in the downtown in terms of trying to restore the buildings. Now, I'll make a comment. I know that we've had some kind of like procedural issues with like Ken Wickenheiser that's done a number of buildings in the downtown. But I will say that Ken uses durable and traditional materials when he's doing his renovation work. So, and I think that's, we should continue with that application of traditional durable materials, not reverting to residential grade materials on our historic buildings.
And it's also possible that these materials may be actually cheaper than the residential materials.
I
don't know, but I'm just suggesting it.
I have no idea. I know that Mark has been working with them. I think, maybe Jeff Green needs to be brought in with his area of expertise. Maybe we need to, the DDA needs to talk to somebody like Jim Jacobs, an architect in the downtown, to find out what maybe his recommendation is.
So what I hear is there other material options that might fit as you're saying, with a historic downtown, but yet also understanding there's, what all those costs are, and then how do you find the partners to come to the table that might be able to assist.
Right.
Okay. I don't think anybody here, I haven't heard anybody not supportive of the concept or idea, and obviously the initiative that a business owner is looking at to continue the improvements that they've made at the location and the great business they're providing downtown. They have a niche that I think is serves well to the community. So, okay, other comments? Looking at Vince or Brian, you have other comment?
Yeah, I agree. I think we all applaud what he's trying to do here. We just, I think what we need to do is assist him and help him getting to the right spot and making it as painless as possible to be able to do it. When I mean painless, I mean obviously in the wallet.
Understand. Vince or Mark?
We're interpreting, you're very supportive of the idea and the objectives. Just let's look at the materials being proposed for the wall there, and maybe approach the DDA about providing some assistance. So
I know that those are coming up in discussion here soon in the meeting with the application process and some projects. So I don't see any other hands or other comments at this time. I know that looking at our time here, we still have about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I know you got 3 more items here, Mr. Pastu.
let me go to the an easy one here. At least I think it's easy. Is charter amendments. We had talked about in the past of doing these with our elections, making some small amendments. I'll be honest with you. I think normally we would have this teed up farther in advance for council consideration, and so there was only 3 of them given the short time frame I was thinking about. One was looking at we had talked about last spring about the election commission, where a number of communities have usually the clerk, city attorney, and either a council member or city assessor serve as the election commission. Clerk Treasurer Lavoie and I discussed it last week, and we thought, given everything that's going on with this current year, this may not be the year to present that. Let's get through the election, talk about it maybe in 2021, as a possible charter amendment, changing the election commission from the full council to, maybe a member of 3. But so after my discussion with Ms. Lavoie, that I thought, it probably makes sense to wait another year. The other,
what are the other charter ones?
well, the other one was considering changing the age of eligibility from 25 to a lower age. I think the Michigan Constitution has eligibility at 21 for a state rep or a state senator. I go, okay, that makes sense. And I don't even know if there was any case law that would require that it even be lower. But I thought 21, if it was good enough for state office holders, it probably wouldn't be a bad number.
Just to follow up on that, it's number 32 or C32 in the charter, and it starts off. There's some reference in there to the justice of the peace and the constable, and then gets onto the other candidates or other elected offices. And I think we could just really focus on the mayor, the council, and the clerk treasurer. I think the 25. I think while it might have been good when this charter came out, I think we're trying to encourage and wanting others to be involved and wait into 25, an opportunity to serve the community in this fashion, I think is late. There's some other language in there about language and speaking skills. I don't think that aren't appropriate there as well. I think it's an easy one to draft up a opportunity to bring into this time frame, and it's one I would support if we had one to move forward. What was your other one, Vince?
The other one was section 47, dealing with appointed officers and 2-year in the terms. And looking through it, at this point, the city attorney has a 2-year term. The rest of them, building inspectors, chief of police, fire department, city engineer, board of review, election inspectors, all have terms. City physician, we don't have. Weights and measures. And my thought was, since the city attorney is at will, you proved his retainer recently, just to eliminate that appointment altogether. And, it is an at-will position, and none of the others are no longer applicable for that entire section.
When would the charter provisions have to be done and turned into the state for review?
Given the current year, we were talking with Ms. Lavoie, we think probably by the end of July would be good. Sometimes it's gone into August, but given that we're going to have a pretty significant general election, it does require review by the Attorney General's office and the governor's office, and they may be getting swamped with local ballot initiatives.
Well, what about the idea of a charter change that removes the condition that our meetings have to be at 7:30 and basically allows the council to establish an annual calendar?
That one, I actually had experience with when I was in Farmington. We had a very rigid, the first and third Monday at 8 o'clock. And basically that was the language that was adopted, was that you just have to establish an annual calendar that you meet once or twice a month, subject to the at least once a month, with what we had. Ours is a little different because we need council to approve periodically the payments. So that's probably why we would need to meet twice a month.
Any thoughts from council on the, I'll just say the two that were presented, and then maybe follow up conversation on the one that the councilman just said. Thoughts on the eligibility or the positions, or moving something forward or not? Mr. Buds, I think you have a comment to make.
Your Honor, I'm obviously working a little bit on the fly here in response to Councilman Angeli's comment, but I don't recall, and I'm looking at C58 in the charter, I don't recall there being a requirement that they be at 7:30, but that there had to be at least 2 held in each month, at least as far as what I'm glancing right now at the charter. I can take a further review at that, but I believe, and we made an ordinance amendment, I want to say about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, that dealt with setting an annual calendar and for regular meetings of the council. So I will look back at that, but wanted to say I think that there was some change in that regard in the relatively recent past.
Yeah, I thought when we had talked about it about a year ago, there was an indication that it was in the charter. I didn't go back today and look at the charter to see if 7:30 was referenced, but that was what I thought we talked about, that it needed a charter change.
So is there interest from other council to move one of those two forward? I think that the language could be, I'll just say simple on the first one, and the second one is just what's to be left or not. Any other thoughts?
The only thing I would caution, and again, Mr. Buds can remind me, but when you look at these, there's going to be cross-referenced, and there is one of the positions, and it could be constable, that shows up multiple times through the charter, and you actually have to, in order to remove it, you literally, I think, have to go in and amend or consider removing each of those various sections. And if it was probably 5, 6, 7 sections that you would have to do that.
Yeah, I do recall that, and it does appear elsewhere, but could maybe focus on the age though too, if that's agreeable.
Would you be okay just if Mr. Buds, Lavoy, and I just took a look at see what would be possible in that regard?
Yeah, if we can make a couple of charter changes that are simple, I'm all in agreement, because the community has been going, has been approving them as we've submitted them.
Okay.
I agree. I think that the community is recognizing that there's some antiquated items in here. That's just the reality, what it is, but there's a way to do it without the belief that we're trying to change something that doesn't need to be changed. So, all right, Vince, I think we'll move forward. We'll get time here for last couple items.
The other item I have, the next item I wanted to talk about would be the airport hangar proposal. Mr. Lewis received a proposal from individual interested in constructing a new hangar at the airport. Part of it is, I almost would like to have us have a pretty good discussion about the future of the airport before, giving the go ahead and the commitment on it. It just, under best circumstances, it breaks even. And sometimes periodically I ask myself, is there a higher and better use for the land? But I wanted to put it out there before we presented the go-ahead with this individual wanting to put a hangar out there. Patrick could give you a few more details if you're interested. So mine was just the rhetorical question.
So Vince, I see there's a couple hands up, but I'll just start. So this is for private hangar. It's not a business or development aspect, or is it the individual looking to put a hangar for personal use?
think it is personal and some commercial use, right, Patrick?
Yeah, that was the impression I got. He didn't say exactly, but he's a fairly well-established pilot at Willow Run. I think he would have some interest in running some students, so like a flight school type thing, but nothing heavy like 20 years ago, Grand Air or anything like that. Just this would be similar to the activities we have out there right now.
Okay, so we have a couple hands. I know that we started talking about this during our goals and objectives and what the future of that is, and I'd be a little concerned of that, having somebody invest a substantial amount of revenue and then find out later there's a change by the council on the use of not just the airport but the property surrounding. I think Councilman Laurie, you're first, and then Councilman Felder, you're next.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple of quick questions regarding the current situations out there as far as the hangars how they're being used. I mean, my understanding is they're basically glorified storage units right now for a lot of the people that utilize them. And you know, if we start to build more, I don't know where we're going with that. I think we need to be a little bit more subjective to how we put these things up as far as who uses them and how we're utilizing them. And like we've said before, if the airport's not going to be used to the best of its ability, maybe it's time to start thinking about going a different route with it. I personally, I think there's a lot of things that can be done with the airport business-wise that could really be impactful to the city of Monroe. But I'm not sure if building more hangars is the route to go or not.
Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. Very much had a similar line of thinking to you in terms of the long-term plans for the airport, and if we were planning on expanding. And I don't want to build ourselves into a corner if they're going to put structures on an area that we were planning to use for something else in the future. I just want to make sure that as we're moving forward, we know the direction that we want to be in, and we're not putting down stuff in the short term that's going to obstruct those long-term goals. But generally, very open and supportive of the project. If they're going to be active and use it, I think that we should certainly encourage that.
Councilman Michelangelo.
Thanks, Your Honor. I'll make the comment that I did a couple of weeks ago when Vince floated the balloon the first time. We saw what happened about 5 or 6 years ago at the Port of Monroe. You get the right person in that takes over the facility and it becomes operational and profitable. The city has always treated the airport like it was a stepchild, and we've never made a full commitment to it. We're one of the few airports of its size that doesn't have a new terminal. I mean, I've talked to Vince about this. You go to West Branch, Everett, Manistee. You go to some of the smaller communities that are even smaller than us, and they have really nice terminals that bring in a lot of recreational traffic and also serve their business community. But we really haven't given the airport the attention that it should be given, and we really haven't made the investment that we should make in it. And I know that Patrick knows all of the funding that we're under with MAC and FAA, but the Michigan Aeronautics Commission used to provide 90% money, and the FAA would provide 5%, and the city would provide 5%. So let's say a terminal cost $1 million. The city's allocation of that would be $50,000 to have a brand new terminal. Are we doing it? No. Either we start making a concerted effort to improve the airport, or we abandon it. But I'll make this statement again. Once the airport is gone, we're never going to have an airport again. So my feeling is, let's get somebody out there that can start managing it and making it a more profitable operation.
I think Councilman, I think that's kind of where we ended last time, and yet this comes up with a thought, and I think it's important that we discuss it in those terms, because if we're going to have it, we obviously have to do much more than we currently are, much more in a professional sense, And then, and it starts with good leadership, not just from what we as council set as policy, but the right person. Your comparison of the board is exactly it. Councilman Lohr, one more comment, and then I know we have to get to another item.
Yeah, I guess the only comment I have is what's holding us back.
I'll be candid with you. We have not put a lot of attention into it. I will, since our last airport manager left, Patrick has done a good job of addressing a lot of the operational administrative items that probably languished for a period of time. And there's still more to be done. But one of our residents one time was talking with me and asked the question is, do you want your airport as a cost center or a viable enterprise that adds value to the community? And that really is the essence of the question. You know, if we're going to keep the airport, then we really need to jump into it and try and make it, a viable enterprise that adds value to the community. But it is a commitment. And I mean, from A to Z, I had a situation another community where we had an enterprise that was not functioning well. We decided we're going to go hire a general manager, built in a system of incentives for essentially profit sharing. And I will tell you to this day, that thing just turned into a moneymaker for the city and just an icon in the downtown. So it can be done, but we got to be thoroughly committed to it. And so, again, I'm asking the rhetorical question. If this is the direction you want, that's fine. But we need to proceed with, the commitment on it. So.
Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. I understand that we're pressed for time, so I'll try and be brief. If we're trying to determine a long-term goal for the airport, and this project sort of is in a holding pattern until we can decide that, then do we need to advance the hiring process for a new airport manager to replace our current interim, who is doing as good a job as could be expected, but certainly, that's not his primary attention.
Well, I think part of it too is if we did this, and this is something I would have to do working in conjunction with, Mr. Lewis, is let's lay out what are the expectations, what are the goals that we need to achieve, and more importantly, how do you attract pilots in business that helps, turn the operation into a profitable or at least a better break-even proposition, but mostly make it more viable for the community. So that'll take a little bit of us kind of brainstorming, thinking, some facilitation, but.
Well, Vince, I'll say that I hear there's a willingness. I think that it's going to take some upfront work before we get to where we're, placing somebody there, because I'd like to see, as Councilman Michelangelo said, there's some that have been moved forward and got to where they got, as where they're very viable, very productive. And so what is that analysis? Is geographic study. And I'm not saying a study, I'm saying collect some data, collect some information. I think there's a willingness that I hear. And then I think we can make some of the decisions whether we're moving in that direction or not. And I think the time is right for this as well. I know it's going to take some effort and work though. So I think as council members might have some other thoughts, they can send those along as well. I do want to get to the final item on here because it does lead into the council meeting, the opportunity for public comment. I know that there's those that have sent letters in, those that have called in, and those that are also participating, waiting for that. So Mr. Pastor, you have one more item.
Yes, it's a discussion regarding the Custer statue, just putting together some notes. I know it's been a few weeks since we received the petitions, comments regarding the removal and or relocation of the statue at the corner of Monroe and Elm, both pro and con in support of the statue. Plus, we've received additional calls here over the last few weeks. As you know, the statue's been in its current location for 65 years and part of our community since 1910. General Custer has been a controversial figure in U.S. history, representing both the positive and not so positive as it pertains to race and ethnic policies of the United States government. His story is pretty complicated, much like that of our nation. While the statue is dedicated in part to the valiant efforts of the Michigan Cavalry Brigade at the Battle of Gettysburg that turned the tide of the Civil War, leading ultimately to the surrender of the Confederacy and abolition of slavery. Maybe given these turbulent times, it is appropriate to reflect upon the significance of what it represents. But in doing so, it's hard not to acknowledge General Custer's role in the American Indian War. While there are strong emotions with both perspectives as it pertains to Custer and the statue, I would hope that an opportunity to balance these strong emotions can be achieved. During this interim, one of the proposals I heard was to consider adding interpretive historical displays that would reflect the full and balanced story of General Custer, both in his role in the Civil War and the American Indian War as well. Our Monroe community is blessed with a number of talented individuals that would be able to present this in a balanced and historically appropriate context, serving both to educate and inform our current and future generations regarding General Custer, along with the trials and tribulations of our nation. So, and it's been the case with the council, you know, any of the practice has been that these decisions be done in a thoughtful, transformative or transparent and in informed basis. But I will tell you that I was intrigued with the historic interpretation proposal or concept that's been brought forth during the past few weeks.
So Vince, I know you have an agenda because I know that we're getting, and council's received some communications as well. We may have lost Councilman Felder, but I think we're going to continue on to meet the timelines here. And I know he'll rejoin us quickly if he's not with us now, at least from video. So Vince, your, I guess, introduction to that, what is it at this point from the council that you're looking for or conversation?
Well, I think just your thoughts on how to proceed, because I think both the proponents and opponents of relocating or removal of the statue have been, you know, very, very emotional in their quest. And yet I think at the same time, how do we find a balance for some of this and probably tell a broader story of not only General Custer, but aspects of our nation's history.
All right, Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think that as we and I think you yourself, Mayor, have proposed in the past, it's more of a let's sit down, let's talk about this, and let's discuss exactly what the fallout of General Custer was. Let's discuss the history. Let's find out what exactly he did, what he didn't do, etc., so that we can verify and vet out whether or not his actions were appropriate or not. And these are the things that we really haven't discussed with the people that are upset with him being there. A. B, another thing that we've talked about as well is introducing more Indian culture to the city of Monroe. And by that, I mean either putting up statues, at least something to let people know that there was Indians here, Indian culture in the city of Monroe, to bring about that history as well. I think there's the more the merrier when it comes to that. And I think that I think a lot of the people that are trying to remove or move the statue agree with me that they want to see more history of the Native Americans in the city of Monroe. And I think for us, it'd be a benefit.
Councilwoman Germaini.
I agree with Brian. I am opposed to taking down the statue, but I would agree to putting up something that would reflect the Indian heritage throughout Monroe, throughout the country, and tell the story of Custer and his relationship with the Indian nations as well. It wasn't negative, it was a positive relationship.
See, Councilman Felder, you're back. That's great. I'll see if there's other comments from council. I'll start by making a comment and see if there's others from the council as well. You know, as this comes to light, it comes around obviously the tragic event and the death of George Floyd that raised the conscience and voices around our country, and then it goes to other topics and other items. And here in Monroe, and I don't think it surprised people when it started going to General Custer, because this has been brought up in the past about the Custer Monument. And, removing the monument doesn't change the fact of what the why it's here or why it's been moved previously. But what we do, I think, is going to be remembered. And I think that we have, history, and it's not just about history, but what we have is opposing views of circulation and contacts, not only locally, but from around the region and beyond across the country, the people that weigh in. There's those that are adamantly opposed that the monument remain. And there's those that are adamantly in support that it remains. Those are not going to be discussions, in my opinion, to get to resolution of how to meet everybody's needs. So you have to finding the right people that are willing to learn. If you're not willing to learn the other side of what the information is, then you're not having a dialogue of resolution. You're only having a debate or an argument. So we need to sit with those that are looking at the broad sense of what's going on in our country and why this is important to that or why it's not important to it. And I agree that we need to learn more, because much of what I've heard is not reflected for the purpose that it's there. I understand the perception. I understand what people see from that. I said it before with the national park, and we have our national River Race National Battlefield Park. They're there as educators that tell the full story, and they don't tell you what to think or tell you what to take from it, but to deliver the information. And as you walk away, you make your determination of what the information is. But simply removing items eliminates that opportunity to actually have the dialogue to begin with. So while I'm not supportive of removing, I am supportive of making sure that we have conversation to tell full stories. I'll take other comments from council. Councilman Vining.
Thank you, Your Honor. I again, like I stated at the last conversation about this, for me personally, it doesn't really, whether we remove the statue or not, I think the conversation needs to be moved more towards the lack of opportunity for Black people and others in our region, in our city, and in our county. So that even if the statue was removed, I don't think that it's going to remove the systematic racism that is a part of who we are. I mean, as far as, I don't understand why we need to be more educated on Custer when we already have a Custer week. We have entire museum, the word I'm looking for. We have entire areas in the museum and in the library dedicated to Custer. There are groups that are dedicated to the education of General Custer. And so I know in our city, there's a lot of learning when it comes to General Custer. And then there's another perspective of learning that I think is not presented to our young people here in the city. But for me, you have the President Monroe statue in front of the courthouse. There's a history of him being one of the most violent U.S. presidents towards Black people in the history of the country. I mean, we could go on and on. I heard somebody mention, are we going to change all the street names? Are we going to change all the building names? I think it's symbolic, and I don't want to be misconstrued that I am not supportive of the young people and other people who are making their voices heard on, on removing some of these monuments that many of us consider monuments to racism and white supremacy. I don't want to knock their efforts or their cause. But for me, I think if removing statues and things like that is more of a symbolic gesture, because does that mean it's going to open up opportunities in the city where we're 200 years old? We've only had one Black police officer ever on the city police force. No Black firemen. I think I might be the only Black person who works for the city of Monroe at this time. You can go to the county, very few Black, I'm speaking historically. I'm not just talking about in the last years, but historically. So opportunity is limited in the city for many, and it's not for lack of trying or lack of intelligence or any of those things. There's a reason why this is happening. I don't have all the answers as to how we got here, but I think it's bigger than the statue. And again, I don't want to knock people's efforts towards having it removed, or even the people who want to keep it. But I don't like, I feel like I'm being preached to when I'm told, oh, we need to get more education about General Custer and who he is, as if that's going to change the minds of the people who are offended by the statue. I don't think it will. Having more education about Custer is going to change their minds, because they're citing different sources than the sources that are normally presented in our city. So again, I said a lot, and I guess I just said all that to say that there's a deeper issues. There are deeper issues here. And I think that for some, the Custer statue represents those deeper issues. But if we just remove that statue and we don't talk about some of the deeper issues such as racism and lack of opportunity for certain groups, then it would all be for naught, even if we did remove the statue. That's my 2 cents. So that doesn't really help to say whether I'm for or against it. But I think that the focus needs to go much deeper than the removal of a statue or several statues and monuments.
Thanks, Councilwoman. I know there's a couple more comments. I think points taken is what I got is, at least, doing a symbolic action, and there's been those around the country, and they're misguided only because the ones that are getting some locations are not on the topic in a broader sense that you're raising. And that's where the focus should be. I know there's opportunities. I'll be making comments during the council meeting out at the college for people that want to actually have a dialogue about the broader aspects of what we need to discuss. Councilwoman Whitman had her hand up, and then Councilman Michelangeli.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. I just want to say that this has been very thought stimulating and made me and other people. I have received emails and phone calls regarding not just the Custer statue, but masks. And, we have people thinking about, what's going on in the world today and what we can change. And I believe that instead of taking away something that is historical, we need to add more. Like the other council members were talking about, our Indian heritage. And so we need to really take a look at this and have some thought stimulating conversation to take it's kind of like shifting the picture so that we can get a broader view. That's all I had to say.
Councilman Michelangeli. You're muted, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm not a big revisionist in terms of going back and wiping out things in history that we particularly don't like. I would rather focus our energy on moving forward. It's kind of like what Kelly said, and I agree with her, is like, what's removing a statue going to do? Let's take the energy and put it into positive change based on what's been going on. I mean, that's all I have to say is, everybody's got a limited amount of time. I'd rather spend my time on positive change than going back and erasing textbooks, moving statues, changing the names of city streets. Let's move forward as a community, as a nation. Let's make some positive change in the direction that we want to go in. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, I think I've heard from council members. Councilwoman Vining.
I don't want to be understood to say that I think the removing of the statue is a negative thing. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that I think there's a deeper conversation to be had. Now, when we start talking about revisionist history and you have to understand from the perspective of some of the people who are making these statements, those monuments and those statues are monuments to racism and white supremacy. So I know that everybody has not had that experience and everyone does not feel that way, but I just don't want it to be misconstrued that I'm saying that removing the statue is a negative thing necessarily. I just don't think that our city, the citizens of Monroe, are ready for that because there's a whole psychology behind the reason why we want to have monuments that remind us of these times in our history. And I don't want to get into that on this call, on this Zoom meeting, but I just don't want it to be thought that I'm saying that it's negative to remove the statue. All I'm saying is that, let me just say it straight out. I think we have a big problem with racism in our county and in our city. And I don't see the statue being removed as helping that, but I do see how it would make some people feel better. So I just wanted to clear that up. Thank you, Your Honor.
Sure, Councilwoman. I know we're up to the time, and I'll get a last comment from Councilwoman Germaini, but you think about our community and how do we get people into employment? How do we get people into this? And it's a broad discussion, and it's not one factor, and it's a multiple reasons. And I think we have to be willing to have that broad discussion across the board, starting early when we engage youth of what opportunities there are in the city. And they have to be advised, here's what opportunities are within the city, and here's a path to get there. But we can't wait until later and try to figure out why. We have, when you talk, Councilwoman, about, employees and Black employees, we do have, and yet we've had. And yet, how do we sustain that? How do we move it forward to make sure that we are inclusive in our community and opportunities and advantages for all? And I think that's the broad discussion. How do you become inclusive for everybody so there is equality, there is equity, and removing the statue isn't going to satisfy that. It's just going to simply move to something else. And it's my view. I think that removing the statue fits the needs of some, but it's not going to, as you said, Councilwoman, it's not going to address the issue, resolve the overall items that we have. Councilwoman Germaini, you have a comment, and I know that we're up to the time frame to move forward to the meeting. Councilwoman?
I'll make it very fast. Removing the statue is not going to erase any of the history or any of the items that these people are protesting against. That's not going to solve the issue. So we need to have the open dialogue so that we can solve the issues at hand. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that I'm looking at our clerk there because I know we're at the hour. And I know that we have, I'll just close here with the work session here, knowing that as we get into the city council meeting, as I said earlier, there is citizens' comments not related to an agenda item. Before that is amending the agenda. I've not heard or anticipate there'll be any amendments or actions on the topics that we've talked about tonight. There's much more to be had regarding those. But there will be citizens' comments both at the beginning and the end of our regular city council meeting. Mr. Pastu, any final comment? If not, we're going to adjourn.
Nothing else for the work session, Your Honor.
All right, I see no other comments from council. So at this time, I'm going to close the city council work session. And thank you all for your input on all the topics and information. And I'm going to give the clerk a moment to get situated before we start the regular city council meeting. So I think we're about 3 minutes into that time frame, but we're fine. Clerk, you're muted.
Now I'm ready.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I see, just want to quickly, all council persons are here. Councilwoman Whitman, I know is, there she is. Okay, at this time, call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman,
Here.
Angeli,
Present.
Vining,
Here.
Jermaine,
Here.
Lamore,
Here.
Felder,
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Present. Clerk, next item, please.
The invocation.
Yes.
Guide our working together, give us wisdom to make the right decisions, your understanding to listen to each other, and your compassion to promote the peace and welfare of the residents of this community.
Thank you. At this time, if you join in Pledge of Allegiance, please. The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
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 of the United
United
States.
States
of the
of
United
America,
States of America,
to
to
the
the
republic
republic
For
which it
which it
stands,
for which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible.
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
with
justice.
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I always find that's interesting on a Zoom call because it's trying to catch up with the others' voices. I appreciate everybody's participation. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item will be any amendments to the agenda.
I'll just go to Mr. Pastou. I don't believe we've had any, and any come from the work session as well.
No proposed amendments, Your Honor.
And I did not hear where items from the council were to be moved forward for any amendments to the agenda. I see none. Okay, clerk, next item, please. Oh, next item, please.
The next item are citizen comments not related to an agenda item, and I have several letters to read, Your Honor. So because a couple of them are a little bit longer, I'd like to ask the council to allow me to break them up, maybe read a couple and get a break and let some people speak and then come back to them, if that's all right.
I think that's fine. I think it allows things to continue to move. Plus, we may have those that may be calling. I see there's one raised hand already. But before we get to the citizens' comment, just as we've done at other meetings, we do it before we got into Zoom meetings. And I said earlier, the rules of the chamber don't change because we're on a Zoom meeting. And we'd ask that as people identify themselves, their name. I would like their from a residence, their street, and their community of residents. It was difficult last time. There are many people said they were Monroe, but then there's Monroe Township, there's Monroe County, there's a variety of communities, and it is important that the council understands the input that's coming. Another item on our rules of the chamber is limit your time to 3 minutes. I know there'll be several probably wishing to speak this evening. It's no different than our other meetings on the 3 minutes. We will monitor the time, and clerk treasurer and I, and if it obviously if you're finishing your last sentence or whatever, that's understandable, but continuing on then allows others to be the same respect. And again, these are items not related to an agenda item. And if they're start to speak and it is related to an agenda item, we'll simply ask you to pull that item for discussion as opposed to making comments regarding that particular topic. Clerk, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's good. I will call people as I see raised hands first. And then if someone raises their hand twice and everyone hasn't had a chance to be called on, I'll finish everyone for a first round and then go back to them.
Thank you. Which reminds you, of course, as we get when we're in the council chambers, one person speaks and the other person comes up. But in this case, we're taking phone calls or taking items and letters, and it's not where we hand off through a phone conversation for a string of people to speak, because the challenge with that is others are also waiting in line as well. But there is opportunities for others to speak later. I'm looking at Mr. Buds because he started to raise his hand. He may have a clarification for me. I always listen to the city attorney. Mr. Buds.
Thank you, Your Honor. The only thing I would mention is we have 2 phone callers as well, and I know the clerk treasurer will do an appropriate time of that as well for those that can't raise their hand via the app.
Yes, we will check those numbers as well. So, clerk treasurer, I think we've done the review. You may start with as you have your calls, but also the letters that have been received.
So I'm going to start with a letter. It's from David Engel, co-author, Michigan Civil War Landmarks, Temperance, Michigan. He actually submitted 2 items, and that would take us well over the 3 minutes. So I'm I'm going to summarize the first one, and it will be available for anyone who wishes to ask for it from my office. The first one is it's a history of General Custer's part in the war, and it's particularly the Battle of Gettysburg. And then it goes on to discuss his relationship with Native Americans, et cetera. So it's a chronological order of his history up through the unveiling of the statue. The second document submitted by Mr. Engel was from Edward Norris, Commander-in-Chief, Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War. Dear Mayor Clark and Monroe City Council members, the Brothers of Nash Hodges, Camp Number 43, Department of Michigan, are opposed to the destruction, defacement, and removal of the Custer Equestrian Monument. The Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War's national policy, endorsed by the body of our membership, states that we strongly condemn the destruction, defacement, or removal of any monument dedicated to a Union Civil War veteran or Union leader. These monuments were erected in honor of men who fought to end slavery in the United States. Many of these men gave their lives or carried wounds that affected their lives for many decades. The Union Army and Navy consisted of men of all races, nationalities, and we also had leaders who inspired men and set policy to end slavery. The Union sacrifices led the way for adoption of two very important constitutional amendments. The 13th Amendment states that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as a punishment for crime, whereas the parties shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. And the 14th Amendment states that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive persons of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Our country has recently seen the destruction, vandalism, and removal of Union Civil War monuments, including those dedicated to a regiment of Black soldiers who greatly contributed to turning the tide of the war, to soldiers who were ardent abolitionists who spent many years prior to the war trying to end slavery, and to leaders who inspired others to end slavery. Tearing down, vandalizing, or removing any monument does not bring about change. Change is accomplished through learning and understanding the lessons of history. Wars and violence are no longer necessary, as all citizens can exercise their right to vote, thus influencing the direction of our country. Sincerely, David Engel, Commander, Nash Hodges, Camp Number 43, Department of Michigan, Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War. And then I have another one that is fairly brief, so I'll do that, and then I'll move to take some raised hands. The next one is from Rachel Smith, 613 West Front Street, Monroe, Michigan, 48161. Dear County Clerk, she meant City Clerk. My name is Rachel Smith. I live at 613 West Front Street, Monroe, Michigan, 48161. I would like to address the discussion of the Custer statue that will take place this evening during the City Council meeting. Since I am unable to be there in person, I'm emailing you my concerns instead. I do not believe the statue should be taken down. History is not there for people to like or dislike. It's there for us to learn from. If it offends some people, even better, because then we are less likely to repeat it. It's not for anyone to erase simply because they dislike it. History, good, bad, or otherwise, belongs to all of us. A good example, Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation statue is being taken down because it's offensive. The Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves, and we are the only country in the world to have such an amazing proclamation. Will Monroe follow in these footsteps and remove a piece of our history that pertains to the Civil War and abolishing slavery because some people find it offensive? History should not be something we compromise in order to appease. Hitler removed statues he didn't like, stating it was best for the people. Don't let that part of history repeat itself. Also remember, online petitions are invalid in the state of Michigan. If this petition that took place on change.org to have the statue removed is being considered, I ask why, and have all these signatures been verified as Michigan residents and registered voters. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Rachel Smith. All right. I see one hand raised. And so I'm going to, let's see. So Mr. Mika has been allowed to participate on my end.
Yes, thank you. May I start now, Clerk?
Yes, please, your name, address, and.
Richard Mika. I reside on East Elm in the city of Monroe, Michigan. And I would like to address the threats to the cultural tourism or the actual cultural heritage of Monroe. Oh no, another history lesson. Not quite. On the contrary, I am going to tell you about two things that are now at our doorstep: the politics of appeasement and the weaponization of political correctness. Breaking news. There is a nationwide movement to obliterate our culture and defame our founders. The federal government, through Homeland Security, has taken bold steps to protect the symbols of our nation. No longer will destruction of federal monuments or some symbolic icons be tolerated. This is just the beginning. We are about to see the resurgence of patriotic fervor in this country that defies the contempt-ridden discourse of social media. Communities that fail to act, thereby encouraging lawless behavior, are guilty of political appeasement. Appeasing contemptuous behavior of an unruly mob leads to more demands, a never-ending cycle of inevitable ignorance. Then comes political correctness, rewriting history. This ploy, taken from the pages of the 1960s, has been weaponized. Now, a premise devised from a lexicon of alleged social injustice is used to exact tribute, or you face the consequences: looting, burning, statue toppling, graffiti, and violence in many forms. That just doesn't get it. So, no more history lessons. Face the facts. They are here, and they have to be dealt with. No appeasement, no PC, no mobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mika. Clerk Treasurer, other comments?
All right. All right, there is another hand up, and there we go. Justin is now unmuted on my end.
Justin.
Hey, Council, this is Justin Badger from 423 Washington in the city of Monroe. I'd like to give a recognition to the local law enforcement that has been dealing with these protesters at the corner Elm in Monroe every week. They have been doing an excellent job as keeping it nice and calm and, peaceful. Just wanted to give them a recognition.
Very well. Thank you for your comments, Justin. I'm sorry. Clerk, next.
All right. Let's see. All right. I don't see any additional hands raised, so I'll go ahead and read the other letters that I have.
Very well.
The first one is from well, now that I'm looking at this, the first one I don't know has a name on it. So I'm gonna set that one aside and do some looking while we move on. The next letter I have is from Jack Schwab, 810 West Elm, Monroe, Michigan, 48162. Dear Mayor and City Council, when George Floyd was killed while in police custody and subsequent protests erupted in the streets of cities across America, few Monroe residents saw how this would relate to Monroe's historical past. Yet here we are in the midst of an impassioned debate about the possible removal of the statue of General George Armstrong Custer from its 100-year-plus prominent location on the corner of Monroe Street and Elm Avenue in downtown Monroe. The statue was erected in 1910 to commemorate Custer's heroic service as a Union general in the Civil War, commanding soldiers of the Michigan Cavalry Brigade. During the Battle of Gettysburg, a turning point in the war, he fought brilliantly. He continued as a loyal soldier in the war to end slavery in America by defeating a morally bankrupt cause. Custer continued his military career as a soldier on the Western Plains during the American Indian Wars. The U.S. government's national policy at that time required Native Americans to live within the confines of reservations, but they had no concept of borders, fences, and land ownership. As commander of the Army's 7th Cavalry from 1866 to 1876, Custer led his troops in attacking and killing countless numbers of Native Americans who were off the reservations. This pattern ended at the Little Bighorn River on June 25, 1876, when Custer's force of 262 cavalry soldiers, packers, and scouts attacked a force of about 5,000 Native American warriors. Custer and all of his troops were defeated and killed. Both these terms of military service were performed by the same man, a man who grew up in Monroe, got married, walked down the same streets that we walk today. He was not a perfect man. He was a soldier. He followed orders from higher soldiers. Perhaps that's the truth the statue can teach each of us. We erect statues of historical figures to remember their acts of bravery and service. By reminding future generations of their positive character, we hope others will imitate them and aspire to achieve their own potential for greatness. But these statues can also alert us to our potential to cause harm, even to commit atrocities. In either case, they serve an immensely important purpose. Tearing these statues down or hiding them away in a remote location robs us and our descendants of the lessons they could teach. Keeping the Custer statue where it will allow it to continue serving the community as a reminder of a potential for both good and evil. We were endowed by God with a free will. Instead of spending money to move a piece of our history, may I suggest that we erect instead a statue of Martin Luther King next to the plaque at the foot of the pedestrian bridge over the River Raisin that is already dedicated to MLK's memory. Sincerely, Jack Schwab.
Thank you, clerk. I saw a hand raised and it's dissipated, so maybe they're still there. You see.
I see one, so
Cole?
I will go ahead, get Cole.
Okay.
All right, it's been unmuted on our end.
I think she's there. Cole, can you hear us?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please, your name and residence.
Hi, yeah, my name is Cole Bean. I live on Lorraine Street and like right off the Telegraph.
Yep. Go ahead.
So I spoke last time and I know I'm not super eloquent person, but I did want to speak to some of the comments made, I guess, about the statue as well, since that seems to be the time right now. I would like to just say I do agree that moving a statue, removing the statue, and removing the names of buildings and schools and cities and such seems like an arduous task and seems like a scary, slippery slope type of thing that I think could be considered largely symbolic, which I understand. But I do not think that we should disregard the voices of our Black and Native communities who are louder than they ever have been and are being given a platform in a way that they have not been for a very, very long time. And to say that moving it would be satisfying just a few is to once again silence their voices. And I think that while Custer may have done some good things in his past, we cannot ignore the bad things that he has done. And I think by honoring with a statue a person who has a laundry list of things we need to excuse or apologize for, we are continuing a history of honoring white people who have had a racist past or a problematic past or we've had rapists as well as in statues. And I think what's important is that how it affects our communities today, how it affects the people who were affected in the past, their descendants, how people look at Monroe. And I feel like we don't erect statues to people like Hitler, right? We teach about them and their atrocities and their charisma in schools and in textbooks and in movies. We don't erect statues to honor them. That's not how we remember history. We're not trying to erase history. In fact, we have erased history from most of our textbooks. We've erased a lot of Black and Native history from our textbooks. So don't complain. I don't want to hear white people complaining about revisionist history. We've done that already. It's time to listen to our Black and Native communities because they are finally speaking out. And Monroe is like 90% white. Of course, a lot of people here aren't going to understand why this is important and why not just this is important, why a lot of change is needed in our city. Because it isn't fair that Councilor Vining has to be the only person here, a person of color, Black person on the council to speak up for these kinds of issues. And I am speaking as a white person, and I think we've had the mic for a really long time, okay? And I don't think that we are taking this as seriously as we should. And if that statue isn't removed, I want to see some real clear steps for Monroe to move forward and to actually create these opportunities for our community and to create community, this unity together so that we can listen and do what we need to do to not repeat history, not just keep doing the same thing. We are looking towards the future. We are looking towards love. And I just want to impress upon you how important I think most of us think that is. Thank you for all the time.
Thank you, Cole, because you're right. Just at 3 minutes and a couple seconds.
Thank you.
Very good. Clerk Treasurer Lavoy.
I don't see any further hands. I did locate a name. It's an email, so I missed the name on it. It's from Jean Germaini, and I would ask Councilwoman Germaini if she could just help me out here. Is it City of Monroe resident or township or?
He is City of Monroe on Front Street.
Okay, thank you. As a lifetime resident of the city of Monroe, I would like to indicate my displeasure in removing or changing the location of the General Custer statue. These are the reasons I believe that statue should stay where it is presently. The present location is probably the most visible location in the entire city, a location where citizens of the city can appreciate it in addition to allowing visitors coming to or passing through Monroe to view it. Apparently, there's a petition that has been circulated and contains the signatures of 10,000 residents. As this statue is the responsibility of the city of Monroe, I'm assuming these are city signatures. I find it hard to believe that 50% of the residents of Monroe signed the petition, as the latest figures that I can come up with is around 20,000 citizens in the city. There's a national rage to tear down, destroy, or hide out of sight statues of individuals that offend a portion of our society. Much of it is based on emotions, not on weighted reasoned approach based on facts. I hope that Monroe does not succumb to this forced apologetic stance without regard to historical value and the wishes of all genuine city residents. When you read or listen to those in favor of moving the statue, it's clear the purpose is to hide it from public view. This is the sole purpose. It's a subtle attempt to hide artifacts of our history. Yes, even in Monroe, it is happening. The blurring of our history locally and nationally is part of the game plan by forces that have quietly affected the minds of our college kids for the last 20 years. It's as simple as out of sight, out of mind. One member of the city council stated how sickened and upset she got every time she had to pass the statue. I was dismayed at the amount of disgust and bitterness that she displayed against the man in the statue. I don't believe her animosity or others would be satisfied by just moving the statue. However, what she and others do gain would be keeping the statue out of sight in its factual history. The charge against General Custer seems to be that he is warring against Native Indians in the West, and innocent women and children were also killed. This is a tragedy, and this is a problem with wars. Many times the innocent people are killed. During World War II, an astounding 40 million civilians were killed. The charge against General Custer is misguided. General Custer was following his military orders in what soldiers do, whether you're general or private. I suspect this is just another excuse to hide true history from future generations. If it were about truth, they would see General Custer's service to the Union during the Civil War. He has done no more than the American soldiers have done in World War I, II, Korean War, Vietnam War, including the present conflicts. He's not a perfect man and he was not a perfect soldier, but what man or woman could be. Regarding Native Americans, people may think they were just innocent people watching the war go on. The truth of the matter is many Native American tribes served in both the Union and Confederate military during the American Civil War. They were found in Eastern, Western, and Mississippi theaters at the outbreak of the war. For example, most Cherokees sided with the Union, but then they soon allied with the Confederacy. Native Americans participated as individual bands of tribes and as Indian nations in various skirmishes and battles. Native Americans were not ignorant about their place in America. They were very savvy and political in their actions during the Civil War. They did this because they didn't want to be on the losing side of the war. Nearly 29,000 Native Americans served either the Union or Confederate armies during the Civil War. Their loyalties to the Union or the Confederacy were not out of a noble purpose. It was for their own interest as individuals and tribes. It is apparent that tribal nations played a significant role in the development of our nation and also in our local geographical development. In my brief and superficial research, I have a new respect for Native Americans. My recommendation would be not to hide or destroy our heritage, but take this as an opportunity to increase in understanding, not through destruction, but through construction. I believe the American Indian should also be acknowledged here in Monroe, just as we acknowledge General Custer and his role in history. I would love to have the Indian natives recognized through a monument of equal size or volume to that of General Custer, and very willing to donate to such a campaign. We are all brothers together, each with our own past, made up of the Union and our brothers in the Confederacy and our brothers of the Native tribes. Each should be able to express their heritage and preserve the heritage, both the good and the bad, without interference or edit. I know this is
We're at 3:15.
Opposite to spreading the hate and chaos that some people would prefer.
Thank you.
And I will admit, I did edit a paragraph just to try to keep it within the 3 minutes.
Yeah, it seems we've had a couple of 3 minutes and 15 seconds, and that's fine. I think finishing a sentence is always appropriate, and you'll know if they're at the end or not. I believe there was a hand raised, and I'm not sure.
There is.
Okay, I think it was Katie Beth.
It is. Katie Beth has been unmuted on my end.
Do I get to talk now, or do I save it for the end?
Katie Beth, it's your choice. We have two times in which public comments can be made. Now is the time because it's not an agenda item. So if you could just state your name, your street, and community of residence.
Yeah, so my name is Katie Beth Davis, and I live over on La Pleasance Road in the township. And I just wanted to say hi, everybody. Thanks again for allowing this conversation at least to happen. A couple things that I still had questions about was, one, the petition is now almost to 13,000, if not more. But in what way the petition was to work, I believe that we were supposed to have an answer from City Council's legal team, possibly. And the other thing is I had some very constructive conversations with some of you guys at different events these last couple of weeks. And, you know, I don't want to take anybody's history, but again, I've been to college. I've lived in Monroe my whole life. I know the Custer history. I know it's not going to change the fact that there is racism here, and there's a lot of it, and I've been a victim of it, and I believe I've explained my stories to at least a couple of you. We need a symbolic gesture. We need something from Monroe that says, we are here. We are going to listen to you guys. We want to include all of you, and this is what we're going to do in order to do that. Whether it's lowering him from his podium, adding something, whether that be more historical information that is actually accurate, or if we add some sort of Native American tribute, but not even a Native American tribute. We need something that is going to include all members of our community. And that's just all I just want to thank you guys again for giving me a chance to speak. And I really hope that Monroe, unlike the rest of the country, right, that people are taking these statues and putting them in rivers. And, you know, Mississippi took the Confederate part out of their flag. They got NASCAR banned the Confederate flag. That all these places are showing their members signs that, you know, yes, we recognize that this is a problem, and here's what we're going to do to show you that we don't feel this way. We just want Monroe to do something like that for us, whether it's the whipping post, Statue of Monroe, anything, you know, that's it.
Thank you, Katie Beth.
I lost it.
Clerk Treasurer. You're on mute. It's okay.
Sorry about that.
I know you're looking through the list.
Yes. All right, we have another hand raised. All right, unmuted on my end.
Okay. I see Rashida. Rashida, just your name, street, and community of residence.
Sure. Hi, my name is Rashida Kumar. I live off Stewart Road in Frenchtown Township. And I just wanted to say, I definitely agree with Cole in uplifting marginalized groups and their voices, and along with Katie Beth in showing a symbolic gesture of like solidarity in these times. I think I'm speaking on behalf of Maya, or Monroe Area Youth Alliance. It's a group of kids who came together in social justice efforts, and we generally support the removal of the General Custer statue because we believe by removing General Custer's statue, you're beginning the process of uprooting a deeply entrenched notion of white supremacy, one that has embedded itself into the fabric of our own community in Monroe. And I guess this may sound radical to some, but unfortunately it's reality. We don't want to erase history or rewrite it. We just don't think General Custer should be the center of our town. People of color will always feel like they are the other in a town which continues to memorialize mass genocide. We need to alter our visual language. Nationwide activists are doing the heavy lifting. As long as this statue stays up, we stay complacent and in denial of the racism in our own community. People of color don't get to ignore racism in the same way they don't get to ignore the statue in Monroe. We have to begin here, and this would be symbolic of our efforts in doing so and addressing issues and addressing that racism exists, and it's not just a select few group of bigots or whatever. So if you guys don't want to take down the statue, that's fine. But I agree with doing like a symbolic gesture. And then in doing so, you begin that you're ready to take on the fight of things of systemic racism, and like including like you're ready to address issues like the neglect of the East Side community, lack of representation, the ICE detention center in Monroe, the school to prison pipeline in Monroe. I mean, by doing something like this, you're telling us, okay, we hear you, we care about you, we know you exist. So we're just asking you to do something, put your money behind it, put your people behind it, put your energy behind it, put your everything behind it. That's all we're asking. Anyway, that's it.
Thanks, Rashida. Clerk Treasurer, I know you're looking through the list, see if there's any others. If not,
yeah, and I was checking to make sure that I didn't receive any additional emails. before, during council. So if you just give me 1 second to make sure I don't miss anyone.
Okay.
I don't see any further hands raised now. We have one phone number, although it may be a staff person. Oh, we do have more hands raised. So let me go to that and I'll continue checking. All right, unmuted on our end.
So I see Graham Denton. Graham, I think you're.
Can you guys hear me since I'm driving?
You can hear you. I need, so from the start of the meeting, name, your street residence and community of residence.
Graham Denton, West 2nd Street, Monroe, Michigan.
Very good. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Just kind of hearing what everyone's, saying. I hear what you guys are saying in city council and things like that. And no one, have stated symbolic gestures and things like that. But just to hear some of the arguments that city council members make, it would be nice to have a one-on-one with you guys. I randomly got to have that chance with Brian, and we had such a fascinating conversation and really, got to the core of some of these things. Some of you still have some of the basics of the movement wrong completely, such as erasing history books. I attended a meeting put on by Kojo, and that's the president of the community college, and Matthew Bunkelman was there, and he's trying to change the language of Monroe public schools textbooks to highlight that this country is, these are his words, founded on a pyramid of white supremacy and continues to serve in that manner. And to catch you up, he's talking about systemic racism, in that part. And sure, okay, taking down a statue, yeah, we can talk and have a serious conversation about that it's just a symbol to some people and things like that. But like people have said, we're just looking for city council to show us one inkling that they see the marginalized people of this community, and Brian did that by lending me his ear at the last protest. I thought it was fantastic, the conversation we had. We need more of that, like Katie Beth said, you guys said it would be 2 days and you'd send an email out about everything. Where's the communication from city council, I meant what I said when I said this to Brian the second time. I'm a member of this community who cares. Why would I try to make an enemy of city council? Why would you try to make an enemy of people who are outside in the streets who have such passion, who are probably going to shape your government in the next 10 years? You should be embracing these people. And you may not understand it fully, but I invite you all to have a conversation with me at least for an hour, and then maybe possibly understand where I'm coming from and where a lot of your citizens are coming from, and having the most, and yeah, it's an online poll. I didn't think that you had to take any official action to it. I never thought that. I just thought that you would be human beings and listen to 11,000 of your potential constituents. To ignore that is bold, and to just say, let's move on. Well, let's see how you guys want to move on. We're all watching. Thank you for your time. And of course, I know you guys do work hard, and I would love to work with you in the future on not just this, but many projects to clean this place up. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Graham. Clerk Treasurer.
All right, we have another. This is one of the phone numbers. So let's see if there's any comment from the person on that end of the line.
Ending in 388. Does not appear. I don't hear any comment or introduction.
All right. So I'll move on to the next one. All right, unmuted on our end.
I see a Whitney LeBeau. Whitney, if you should be available to speak.
Yes.
Mindful of the.
This is David Dugree, and I'm here with my wife, Whitney LeBeau.
Okay. All right, David.
We are on 816 Buffalo Run in Dundee, part of Monroe County.
Yep.
And I very much agree with the sentiment that there needs to be some sort of good faith measure to prove that some action is being taken, because I don't believe that you can ever expect people to believe that anything is going on behind the scenes if you're not willing to remove this symbol of the status quo. And it's not, I think it's easy for white people like myself to see all these images on the news about these statues being torn down and thrown in rivers and think that they're the next people to be torn down and thrown in a river, but that's not what is happening, and that's not what is going on. And this movement is not about destruction of anyone. It is about picking people up. And I think that there's some credibility that also needs to be given to the fact that this is a very much a younger voice, a young youth-led movement that is saying all these things, and it's time that we listen to the younger people in our community, because they are the future of the community. And so there's a lot of credit to be given to them and how they want to shape our community for the future. And I think that I just like to end by saying, I think something just tangible needs to be done and needs to be seen by these people that have been marginalized for so long. And if it's a statue, it's symbolic, and it doesn't need to be destroyed. It doesn't need to be a constant reminder of oppression that people have to see every day, because you would not erect a statue of someone that has wronged you in the past in your front yard for you to walk by every day. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks, David. Clerk? You're muted. I see there's an Andrew Fogel, I believe. Okay, so I'll just, yes, name please, street and community residence.
Sure. My name is Andrew Fogel. I live on Heights Road. I'm part of Monroe County. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you for letting us all talk today. And along with Rachita, who talked earlier, I'm part of the Monroe Area Youth Alliance. And a lot of what I say basically is backing her up, as well as Cole and some of the other speakers. But I would like to say that, yes, Custer is a symbol to our community, but symbols are important. Symbols mean things to people. Think of the Berlin Wall, the Statue of Liberty, other monuments. They mean things to people. They show what is important to people and what people are working towards. And I think that by removing the statue, not destroying it, I think good ideas would be moving it maybe to the battlefield or the museum or something along those lines. But moving it from the center of our town, St. Mary's Park, to a more area where it can just be remembered as history, shows that we as a community support change. That as a community moving forward, no longer will only white voices be heard. We want everyone part of our community to be heard. So, and then mostly a lot of the points were also said by Cole and Rachita, but I just wanted to say that in our community, symbols are important, and by removing this, we are saying that we are ready to move forward. We are ready to start making real change in Monroe that will include every citizen in Monroe. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Clerk Treasurer?
All right, we have another. All right, unmuted on our end.
Amanda, name, street?
Good evening. My name is Amanda Althouse. I live on Arbor Avenue here in Monroe. Just want to first say thank you for your time, for listening to everyone that has something to say tonight, and in general. I felt I have a responsibility to be here just to voice my support, as well as voice my feelings that you have a responsibility as an elected city council to hear what we have to say, to take it into serious account, and have the ability to disregard your personal beliefs as an elected official and listen to those citizens who feel very strongly. We have an opportunity, a unique opportunity here as a community to say, we aren't going to allow someone that has never been to this town to drive through and look at this statue and think that this is a point of pride versus a point of history. And so I truly believe that it's important to preserve history, to learn from history, to teach with history. But there's a big difference between pride and history lesson. So with that, I would deeply, sincerely ask you to take into account what all of these citizens have to say, to sit down with us, to talk with us, to learn and understand to the fullest extent what we're trying to get across here, and to work together to promote change, not just on the outside, but true change, listening to your citizens and encouraging equality and inclusion, and not just the sake of keeping something because it's always been that way. So again, thank you for your time. And I look forward to our further conversations.
Thank you, Amanda. Clerk Treasurer?
We have another hand. All right. All right.
So we have Cody C. Name. Oh, hold on. Cody. There's a lot of feedback, so I'm not sure if you have something.
Yep, I have a speaker near me I'm walking away from now.
Okay, very good. Just your name, street, and community residence, please.
See, Cody Crutchfield. I live on South Macomb Street in downtown Monroe.
Very good.
See, I want to speak to the comment I remember earlier that taking on the statue wouldn't really directly address issues of racism. I want to say that perhaps not, but it would be a good stepping stone to take, especially when there's a Native American powwow held in Monroe every year by the Turtle Island Dreamkeepers, and I know that a lot of Native American people don't feel comfortable coming to Monroe because of how Custer is idealized by so many people. So I think that moving a statue would be a good symbolic gesture to show people that we care about their feelings and their history and how they were impacted by people like General Custer.
All right. Thank you, Cody. Clerk Lavoie.
All right. All right. JC is unmuted on our end.
Okay, JC, name, street, community residence, please. JC, can you hear us? I do not hear any comments.
Okay. Okay. All right. I do not see.
So I think what I'll do is I think there's an opportunity at the close of the meeting as well for public comment. I think at this time we're going to move on to the next item. So there's still opportunity for those that maybe just couldn't get on in a certain way, and we can return and come back to that. So the next item on the agenda, please.
Next item on the agenda is public hearing 2769, public hearing date for the former Lazy Boy site, Brownfield Plan Revision.
Mr. Pastu, any introduction prior to the public hearing? You're muted, sir.
Sorry about that, Your Honor. I'm going to have Mr. Cochran just give a brief introduction for this public hearing item, and as it moves to council action, that'll cover that as well.
Right. We'll follow that up in the council action. Mr. Cochran?
Sure thing. Honorable Mayor, City Council, Mark Cochran, Assistant to the City Manager and Economic Development Coordinator. We've established this public hearing tonight to consider the amendment to the Brownfield plan that was previously approved by the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority and City Council for the former Lazy Boy headquarters site. The two main items that were amended from the past Brownfield plan to this one are expanding the boundaries to include the former restaurant site that's immediately adjacent to the south end of the Lazy Boy site. And then we also increased the infrastructure, the eligible amount of infrastructure to be reimbursed. Previously, it was just under 2 million. And that covers just about the phase one of the redevelopment on the southwest corner of the site. But we've proposed increasing that to about $6 million to cover the infrastructure for the entire 26 acres redevelopment of the site. So those were the two things that we're asking to be amended and included in the brownfield plan.
At this time, moving forward, because it is a public hearing, I'm going to, we'll start with the public hearing, then we'll see if there's comments for this. So at this time, I'll open the public hearing on item 2769, public hearing the former Lazy Boy brownfield plan revision. Any public comments?
Your Honor, I should mention just for the record that there were no comments on file in the clerk treasurer's office either.
Okay. Any public comments regarding the Lazy Boy brownfield plan revision? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. I don't know, Councilman Ward, if you had any comment. Okay, good. We'll move forward. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 2789, consideration to amend brownfield redevelopment plan for former Lazy Boy headquarters site.
Your Honor.
Councilman Michelangelo.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion to adopt the amended brownfield redevelopment plan for the former Lazy Boy World headquarters.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Michelangelo, supported by Councilman Lamore to, on item 2789, as stated, the amended brownfield redevelopment plan. Any comments from council? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman?
Yes.
Michael
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Germaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 2788, consideration to approve one-year collective bargaining agreement extensions.
Mr. Pastou.
Thank you, Your Honor. City administration's recommending council adopt a resolution approving one-year extensions of the collective bargaining agreements with the Police Officers Association of Michigan, Command Officers Association of Michigan, Teamsters, City of Monroe Employee Association 2, which represents supervisors. The agreements are similar in many ways, that they are for a one-year period, no change in the existing pay plan, and they all have an option to where an employee can convert up to 1 week of their pandemic leave for compensation or deposit to a deferred compensation account. There are only a few exceptions. POAM would be eligible to receive the hazard pay bonus in accordance with Senate Bill 690, which was passed by the Michigan legislature and recently signed by Governor Whitmer. This pay would be reimbursed by the state of Michigan. Although not part of the collective bargaining agreement, it would also include the chief of police, and I might add also the fire chief as well, who would be eligible. The Teamsters agreement has additional language regarding certification pay for water and wastewater operators issued by the Michigan Water Environment Association. And COMEA 2 has two minor changes, unit recognition that would add the chief deputy clerk treasurer, the assistant city engineer, and police record supervisor, which was not contained in the previous collective bargaining agreement, but it also removes the building official from the bargaining unit. And then there was some language as it pertains to the use of sick leave. I will tell you, all of the bargaining units have ratified as of this afternoon. They all came to the table very understanding of the circumstances and uncertainty associated with the city's financial future related to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so all of them were very agreeable and very appreciative of council action as it pertains to the pandemic leave policy that was initiated. So we're requesting that the resolution be adopted, and that it would also be extended to 1 week of pandemic leave conversion for the non-union personnel as well.
Any questions for the city manager from council members? Seeing none. Councilman Michelangelo. You're muted, sir. Yeah, you were good before.
Yeah, Mr. Pastou, can you go over that again? In addition to adopting the resolution of approval, you had mentioned that we also extend 1 week of pandemic leave?
Correct. The option for employees to convert that.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution approving the 1-year collective bargaining agreements extension with POAM, the command officers, Teamster and Comia Unit 2, as well as allowing the employees to convert their pandemic leave.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Michael, supported by Councilman Lamore on item 2788. Consideration to approve the 1-year collective bargaining agreement extensions as stated. No final comments. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman,
Yes.
Angeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
yes,
Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is the consent agenda, and I just want to remind council of an email they received prior to the meeting regarding the revision to the minutes. It was a slight change, but it will require pulling that item from the consent agenda. Approval of payments, item B should read $1,239,949.49, 1,239,949.49.
So Clerk Treasurer, just to clarify, it's the minutes from the council meeting from June 15th. Is that correct?
Correct. One of the votes didn't get recorded in the original, and it was brought to my attention late today. So in consultation with Matt Buds, Attorney Buds, we decided that this is an acceptable way to take care of it.
So we'll need to at least have a motion to have the minutes removed from the consent agenda, and then we'll see what remains for action on the consent agenda. So just, I guess, just looking for a councilman to have that pulled for the minutes. I missed that. Are there any other, Councilman Felder, you'll start if that item or other items on the consent agenda. Start with you, Councilman Felder.
Well, has that already been sufficiently pulled? I'm sorry, I think my audio cut out for a second.
Yeah, if you just ask to have it pulled, that way we can move on, see if there's other
In
items.
that case, I motion to pull the approval of the minutes for the council meeting held on June 15th of 2020 from the consent agenda.
Are there other items on the consent agenda council wishes to have pulled? Other items on the consent, seeing none. So then Councilman Felder, you have a motion to accept the items and pull that item. Would that be correct?
Yes, I would motion to accept all other items not pulled from the consent agenda, having placed on file. Recommendations carried out.
Very good, thank you. And there was a motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Lamore, that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, and carried out. Resolutions adopted, but the approval of the minutes be pulled. Other comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman,
Yes.
Angeli, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. Councilman Angeli, Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
yes,
Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes, thank you. I think we're starting to get a little some space here on everybody's audio. And I'm sorry for the confusion earlier on the polling. So thank you, Councilman Felder. If you would, you pulled an item on the minutes. I want to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to at least receive, or maybe the clerk could review what those changes were on the minutes specifically.
So I can just do that real quickly. It's the minutes in the packet did not include the vote for approval of the consent agenda, and the vote for item 2767 was accepted and placed on file rather than being marked as approved. So that's just correcting the revised minutes you received this afternoon, just corrected that error.
So you're looking for the motion to accept the other minutes, but with the revisions as stated to the Monday, June 15th City Council.
Correct.
Councilman Felder?
I move to accept the amended minutes as presented by the clerk.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Lamore, regarding the approval of minutes. No other comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman,
Yes.
Michaelangeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
yes,
Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
Right. I have no other items, Your Honor.
So we're to council comments, and it is July, so Councilwoman Whitman.
I really have no comments. You know, I think we've discussed so much tonight that I think we've just about discussed everything that I had to make comments on, so I will pass.
Very good. Councilman Michaelangeli.
Your Honor, I'll pass this evening as well.
Okay, Councilwoman Vining.
Your Honor, I wanted to thank everyone who called in this evening to discuss the general Custer issue. And a few people brought up the fact that I stated it would be a symbolic issue. And I just want to clear it up again. Mainly, I feel like it would be symbolic because I feel like the city and the county of Monroe is not ready to accept any chastisement of being viewed and known as a racist community. But listening to the people who took the time to call in, those who are opposed to the statue and how I feel like they're trying to create a narrative that there is some sort of violence or anarchy associated with the fact that some people want to have the statue taken down. And I just want to say, from everything I've seen in our community, in the city at least, these protests and these calls for justice and recognition have been peaceful. And I haven't seen any violence or looting outside of the one incident where the guy snatched the sign over near the Custer statue. But other than that, I feel like the people, the young people have been organized and they have been peaceful. Not that I feel that they necessarily had to be, but that's what I saw. And then the people who are calling for the removal of the statue, I want to thank them as well for calling in. And I want them to know that I do support their efforts and I do support their movement. Because of how jaded I am in dealing with the community, and it gets very draining. I think that I was feeling a little hopeless in saying that it would only be symbolic. But I think with young people like this on top of the movement, you know, maybe there is some hope for reconciliation. Maybe there is some hope for healing. I can't say that I feel it, but it's a pleasure to know that the young people still have that spark in them and they want to have some reconciliation and some healing. I think it would be a bad thing for us to ignore this number of people. I can remember when we wanted to put a road on the west side of Monroe Street, and I think maybe 3,000 signatures jumped on, and we halted that plan so quick. I remember when some people didn't want a two-way street, and a handful of people spoke up, and we seriously considered not doing it because of those handful of people. But to know that over 13,000 people have spoken, and yeah, I'd be curious to know how many are from the city or the county. But I think it would be a bad thing to ignore that. So maybe some further conversations to figure out what we're going to do. But I want the young people to know, especially the young people to know that I support them. One question I had, I don't know if the chief of police is on the line. I want to ask about the body cams. The body cams, I think we purchased them some time ago. And I don't know what's taking so long to get them on the officers' uniforms. I think some situations that we've been put in and some of the litigation that we've been put in maybe could have been avoided or taken care of in in a quicker manner if we did have body cams. So I'm interested in when are those gonna go on the officers' uniforms? Thank you, Your Honor.
Thanks. There's Chief McCormick is going to ask Mr. Pastu if he had comments, but Chief's on. So Chief McCormick, welcome.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. We do have the body cameras out in kind of a TNA status right now. So they were certain, a couple of the protests we've had, different events, we've had the officers wearing them. The policy is done. It's just a matter of working out some of the bugs in the equipment, but we're ready to have them out on regular use.
Your Honor.
Yes, Councilwoman.
Do you have a time frame? Is that a month, a week, 6 months?
No, we're looking at about 2 weeks. It's a matter of syncing it up with the system that we have now. There is redaction issues with them, making sure the people are trained. It's, to put the cameras on the officers, that's the easy part. And the officers want the cameras. It's the back end, it's the storage of it, the redaction, the issues like that we have to make sure that the office people are trained when FOIAs come in, if things need to be redacted, that the court's aware of that we have them and getting them that information.
So this package that we purchased, it didn't come with things to address redaction issues?
That was a separate purchase for redaction.
Oh, okay. Those are two different programs?
Yes. Yep. So when the cameras are recorded incident, if there's things that need to be redacted because of victims' rights, children, videos that may have been inside of a home, that needs to be run through a redaction software system to create a product that we could then release.
So you said about 2 more weeks, Chief?
That's our hope. We've had a few things come up along the way.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Germaini. Oh, you were done, Councilwoman Viney. I'm sorry, did you have other comments?
No, sir. Thank you.
All right, I thought I may have missed something. Councilwoman Germaini.
I just want to say that I welcome the conversation and debate with regard to the statue here in Monroe. I respect everyone's opinions and thank them for speaking up. And I want to thank our police for keeping everything calm at all the protests. But I want to say this, the monuments, to me, when they're being torn down across America, this reflects the threads that make up the fabric of America. And that's what bothers me. But I do welcome the conversation. That's all, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Councilman Lamore.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think that we are listening to the members of our community, young and old. And I think that there's further conversation to be had and things can be done to enlighten what they're asking for. Like Councilman Germaini, I don't think that removing the monument is going to help that cause. Moving the monument's not going to help that cause. But I think that those questions can be answered by talking and coming to common ground somewhere. I also want to thank our police officers for the last protest I attended. I was there for about 4 hours. I can't imagine how they felt wearing all the gear and being very hot that day. It was very uncomfortable, I'm sure, for them, but their professionalism was outstanding, needless to say. So I thank them for their efforts for that day and the job well done. That's it. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. Wishing everyone a happy 4th of July. Hope everyone turns out for the upcoming election. Hopefully the clerk's office has helped you make that easy via any absentee ballots you may be receiving. I hope you exercise your constitutional rights. I certainly always appreciate the participation from our community on issues like this, on issues that they care about. It's always nice to see them. Sometimes it gets a little bit lonely at these meetings. I'd always rather have them be here than not. And I hope that they can feel, I hope that they feel like their representatives, like all of us, are accessible. I know I've seen a lot of other councilmen here. I've seen the mayor at events throughout the community. I was at the Juneteenth march. I was at the candlelight vigil at Munson Park, trying to make myself available for anyone who wishes to contact their elected leaders. I think my phone number and email are online. If anyone wants to contact me, a couple of individuals spoke about a desire to do that this evening. 734-344-2579. That's the phone I have in my hand. That's not an office or anything. You'll get me. So I certainly hope that that line of communication is always open, because I really think that that's the way out. This communication, this dialogue that's starting here is certainly the beginning of something. It's not the end of something. I do hope it continues. I know that there are other discussions of which I have participated. I know that the mayor's participated. I know that other council members have participated in, being led by members of the community, being led by the community college and Dr. Corte. I hope that we can continue that. I hope that we can start something of ourselves to address the issues that have been put in front of us. There are certainly pathways forward. I can think of several of them. It's certainly sometimes difficult to fit that all into the meetings in which we have to discuss it and the time that is available to us. We certainly ran into one of those issues this evening. So I look forward to continuing that conversation in the past. I'm sorry that many people have found those lines of communication to be disrupted. We will work and try to remedy that as best we can. And then certainly to draw and share our sadness with our neighbors to the south, our friends to the south, in the loss of their police officer down there in Toledo. We certainly have had tragedies up here in Monroe County. And this community knows what it is like to lose one of their own. I think it's admirable, both for the job that the police are doing and the conduct of the protesters, generally for everybody. It's peaceful. People respect the process. The dialogue, and I think in many of the protests, they're thanking the police for showing up and protecting them, and allowing that to take place and allowing for a forum for that to happen. I've been at several of them myself. So I hope that can continue in the future. I hope this conversation continues in the future, and I hope all of you are here to participate in it. Thank you, Your Honor. That's all I have for this evening.
Thanks, Councilman. Appreciate your comments. I will shorten my comments as a result of that, because it's very along the same lines. I think that, I've received many phone calls, emails, and had conversations, as you and other council members have as well. So, I've been, like I said, I've been approached by callers and letters, emails, and those that are willing to call in obviously have a voice that want to be heard. And as the councilwoman said, we shouldn't ignore that. And I don't think we have ignored that, but also we shouldn't ignore all the perspectives on the conversations. I'm not going to count the numerous emails and calls that I've received, and they're divided. It's interesting, those that want to speak vocally are more willing to come on this technology side, and others have a less likeness to do that and are making and sending messages. So I take that in full perspective of when we have to make such discussions. And we have had the discussions. Council has talked from the onset, George Floyd's killing, and made comments. And I think council has spoke out against those actions by those officers and what happened in Minnesota and other items that have gone on. But also, in opposition to racism and understanding what equality and equity, social justice, and healing is about. I had a conversation over the weekend with somebody, and they said they were looking for something from the council. They're looking for a voice and a message. And I said, well, just because they hadn't heard it doesn't mean it hasn't been said. Or just because they weren't at a particular activity doesn't mean that the council members aren't there. So I tried to give that perspective as well, because I can't hear everything from everybody, because I'm not everywhere as well. I don't think any of us are. but just to understand that the conversation that tonight and some of the positions of this, I think, should be helpful. And public can go back and look at some of the past council meetings. So I have a couple of items, and the first one I think Councilman Felder already spoke to. There is options and opportunities when you talk about having an honest conversation about racism, and it's hosted through the Monroe County Community College. Dr. Corte and Florence Buchanan are kind of chairing and leading that, but there's other conversations in our community as well that are occurring to where you can to have the opportunities to meet. I've given my business card out, and I did have a conversation at one of the walks, and in an extension of asking the person to call me is sincere, and I still wait for that phone call so we can have a conversation and understand perspectives, but also understand what our paths forward. The other item I want to mention is the Citizens Planning Commission is having a meeting next Monday. It will be a Zoom meeting. It will be posted through the city, of course, but it's about the zoning ordinance discussion. I received a call, I believe it was about that, called the person back. If he's watching tonight, you have to set up your voicemail for me to leave a message. I'd love to talk to you about, I think it's about that particular item. So, but it's next Monday at 7 p.m. is the Planning Commission. And I know that the administration is speaking with the council about having a special work session on a topic as well. Prior to that, should be able to do that within an hour. So because we cannot run over into the other time about the Zoom volume that we'd have to have if two different meetings were going on. I'm going to stop with that because then Councilman Felder covered much of where some of my thoughts were in relation to communication and opportunities and moving forward. I think we have a ways to go, and just because I think the item of the Custer Monument, while some think it's the visible part to it, and action then isn't going to eliminate the conversation that has to occur. And I think we have to have that before we start making actions about some of what may be done in that. It makes me think of this. I'll close here. It makes me think of what's been going on in the country and some of the monuments, and they're not related to the bigger picture of what the conversation needs to be. In Wisconsin, the monument that's called Forward was a monument of a lady. It was from the 1890s. It was about women and moving forward and having a voice, but a vision. And yet it was torn down because, and the person was asked why. So well, that monument doesn't speak for me. To me, that's not a good enough reason, because then what happens 50 years from now or longer if those monuments and things in the future don't speak for the public of that time? So I think that we have to have the conversation that I think most of the council members have stated too, as we continue to move forward. And I agree, monuments speak differently to different people, and some are not going to be satisfactory and some will be satisfactory, but that doesn't mean the others that it could switch shouldn't be then the immediate action, I guess is what I want to say. So I'll stop there, and I know that we have a couple others. Clerk Treasurer Lavoie.
Yes, so I have quite a few thoughts on the subject, but I think my time would be better served tonight, one, yielding to those that are still waiting in the waiting room to speak, but also just reminding people what the role of the clerk treasurer's office is, accessibility to the ballot. And we are working very diligently on that right now. Absentee ballots have gone out. We are still processing applications. There are a whole different ways of getting involved with the elections this year. You can go online and submit your absentee application. You can call our clerk's office, a lot of different ways. So if you need something regarding elections in the city of Monroe, please call your clerk. If you live in another jurisdiction and you aren't sure who to talk to, I can still be reached, and 734-497-5319. Give me a call and I'll be glad to help point you in the right direction. Additionally, the clerk's office, as you saw tonight, accepts correspondence. If you can't be at a meeting or don't feel comfortable calling in, we'll be glad to read your correspondence on the record. And we have access to the records of past meetings, and we can help you get connected with the history of what's come before with some of these decisions and et cetera. So accessibility is what the clerk's office is about, and we are here to help the residents and the electeds and anyone really gain access to government. So please feel free to contact us, and I will yield the rest of my time to those in the waiting room.
City Manager Pastu. You're muted, sir.
I apologize. You know, I had indicated if there was interest in the case with the city council to hold a special meeting, they would be 2 closed session items. One that we talked about, my evaluation, and the other is a land acquisition matter. If you don't want to do it next week, we would schedule it then for the 20th. Neither have any great urgency other than just the awkwardness of having 2 different Zoom meetings, one in an open session, one in a closed session. So whatever council's pleasure is. But I would like available to within 1 hour if we did it next week, so you can watch the Citizens Planning Commission presentation regarding the zoning ordinance.
So I guess it's an opportunity here for council to kind of weigh in on the manager's request. Is it something that council will be available next Monday at 6 p.m. to finish by 7 for the 2 items stated? I'm just looking to see if there's problems with that with any council members. I don't see any no's. So how about we'll start with a request to the manager to schedule that, and then get a second from a council member. And I guess I'll ask that we set that for next week for a special meeting.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion that we establish July 13th at 6 p.m. for a special meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have support there, and it's not a motion for a vote here. Just if there's complications, please send that into the manager for your schedules. But we'll move forward with getting that posted within the clerk's office. I see Michelle. Yep. And if Mr. Buds has any, we'll get that included back to council. So we can plan on that for next week.
Thank you.
Mr. Pastor, anything else?
No, nothing else, Your Honor.
And we'll send that correspondence out so we have it posted correctly. We know what the agenda items are for the special meeting. Thank you. So Clerk Treasurer Lavoy, I did see a couple pop-ups there on hands just as we were going into our meeting. I don't know if I think it was Corey or Cody is still there, and then there might be a second one.
So it looks like JC is back. So let's go there first.
Yeah, that's right. That's who it was. JC.
Hello.
Okay, you're JC.
Can everybody hear me?
No, JC, you got feedback with a second speaker or something. So you're going to have to remedy that. And if so,
Okay, how about now?
yeah, that'll work. So we need your name, street.
My name is JC Nobles. I'm from the city of Monroe, Front Street. I just wanted to talk about the statue, the General Custer statue, and why I feel like it should not be up any longer. I feel like for everybody who is a person of color, it's a symbol of fear. It's a symbol of hate. Yeah. It's a symbol of genocide. Yeah. And that, to me, should not represent the city of Monroe, and it shouldn't represent us as a country, the United States of America. Someone said earlier that these statues are a fabric of our country, and I beg to differ. Our country, we do have a horrible past of, things that we've done, but I don't think that's who we are now. I don't think that's who we should strive to be. And I think we should make a change starting with that at least. Yes. Can everybody hear me? Yes.
Hey, JC, hold on. Hey, JC.
Yes, sir.
While we're in a Zoom meeting, it's still kind of the rules of the chamber. It's about getting people's view and voices. And so we can move on to the second one. But it's not about I guess, a group response. Do you have other things you'd want to add, please?
No, that's it for now.
All right, thank you, JC. Clerk Treasurer?
All right, one moment.
That's good.
Okay, Corey.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Corey, your name and then street and community residence.
Okay, so my name is Corey Goodlow. I'm from Monroe, Michigan, and my residence or my address is 409 Depot Street.
Very good. Thank you, Corey.
I wanted to say to the members, I heard a couple of members say, even though like they understand the plight, they understand our frustrations, but simultaneously they followed it with the word but. And I just want to say that there is no but when it comes to crimes against humanity. You're either on the side of right or you're on the side of wrong. And this man, the statue of this man, this was a guy who pillaged people. He raped and murdered women and children. And if America wants people to see itself as this paradigm of virtue, then I think that you can't commemorate and you can't mythologize figures like that. And I can say, and I also want to say that I am very disappointed in the naivete in this town. We're standing out front of the statue right now, and we've got met with a hail of middle fingers, people saying F you, Trump 2020. And I can't really blame them for their racism. I can't blame the parenting. It's the school system. I think that the Monroe Public School system needs to alter their curriculum because it preserves the myths, the fantasies, and the lies that we're trying to correct. And at the same time, it advances anti-Black racism. And I think what we need to do, if we want to move forward as a community and as a country, we have to have a culture of truth and consistency. And if we build those two, then we'll be able to move forward as a community. And maybe then it'll free some people from feeling that just because they're white, that they have superiority and that they have entitlement and privilege. But really, if they learn the truth about their history, if they learn the truth about how this country came about and how it became so prosperous, I think then that they'll start to see that their whiteness is just merely incidental and not an attitude of superiority, entitlement, and privilege. That's all.
All right. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a wonderful night.
All
Clerk
right.
Treasurer?
Shoot. Okay.
I see a Mr. Slatt.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Christopher Slatt, 33 East Front. I'm not sure if the Custer statute debate is something I should be willfully wading into, but I just want to say, personally, I'm ambivalent. I understand the history of Custer. We're always going to have Custer history in Monroe to some extent. And, the statue doesn't offend me personally, but it does offend and cause significant pain to Black friends of mine, brown friends of mine with Indigenous backgrounds. And I think it's important for elected officials to, look beyond themselves and make sure that they're advocating for people with experiences and priorities that are very different from their own. And so I would just encourage everybody to, there's a pro-Custer statue side of the debate, and it's often dominated by people who I think have academic reasons and nostalgic reasons. And then we have another side of the debate that's driven by, some really tangible pain and generational sadness. And like Councilwoman Vining said, some hopelessness that that their representatives don't care about their priorities. I think there's a really good compromise to be made in moving the statue to the park that we already have that commemorates Civil War history rather than putting it right in the middle of town as if it's the most important thing about Monroe. That's my personal opinion. But I think we all know that inevitably this statue is going to move for a very simple reason. And that's because the next 10 years, of Monroe as a historical attraction are going to be defined by the river raising battlefield and not General Custer. And the battlefield has a lot of Native American history there. And Superintendent Bentley has done a lot of work in bringing the stories of American Indian tribes into that battlefield park. And I've been part of that, a small piece of that work I've been a part of through my work at the ISD. And the Custer statue has been hugely dissonant and a point of conversation at every conversation that they've been having with every chief from every tribe that was involved in the river raising battle. So I think, you know, at some point we're gonna have to make a decision. Are we gonna move forward with what we want Monroe to be, especially from a historical perspective? Or do we want to kind of cling on to how things have been since 1955 when they moved the statue? So just something to think of. I think it's inevitable that you're gonna have to do something with this statue at some point. So the question is when and for whom, I guess. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Christopher. Clerk Treasurer Lavoy.
All right, I don't see any additional hands raised.
Okay, and I'm sure we'll have additional conversation as this goes forward, not only internally, but with others. I remind people about the Zoom meeting on Thursday. There's opportunities for the community to have a dialogue in that arena as well. Seeing nothing further, motion to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilman Felder to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman,
Yes.
Angeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Maney,
Yes.
Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes, thank you all, and thanks to all that called in, but also the letters and information. It's great to see everybody as always. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next Monday.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you all.